Hello and welcome to Green Pass Gaming. I am your host Flap, and who remembers that from 7 years ago? Unbelievable, 7 years ago, where we were all kind of getting excited for the Xbox One era. Well, some of us were, not all of us, but yeah. We've got the show tonight to say kind of goodbye to the Xbox One, but just to kind of reminisce about it. But we'll talk about that a little bit more in a sec. But as always, helping me co-host this show and steering the ship, please welcome to the show, Puxley. How are you?
Hello, Flap. I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. This is your second podcast in as many days, I believe.
Yes, it is. I was on the Indie Games podcast last night. That was a lot of fun. And yeah, onto our own show today.
Excellent. Well, you've got a little way to go until you're as popular and as busy as VJ on the podcasting scene, but you're getting there. And talking of VJ, hello, sir. Welcome to the show. Regular panel member. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks, Flap. Yeah, good to be back.
How many podcasts have you done this week?
What did I do this week? I've no idea. I think I missed Boone's one this week, actually. So I did Tuesday and no, I did I? I can't remember now. Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm all over the place.
Wow, you've done that many, you can't remember.
Yeah, probably.
Excellent. Well, up next, welcoming back to the show, we have SX2. You know him as SX2, but tonight we're going to be calling him Scott. How the devil are you, sir?
Good evening, Flap. Thank you very much. Third time on the show. So thank you very much for having me back. But I'm well. Thank you very much. How are you doing?
Yeah, all good. Thank you very much. It's this week has been an incredibly busy news week on all fronts. In fact, it's probably been the busiest kind of news week for the next generation that we've had, well, probably since December, strangely enough. Because obviously all the embargoes are lifted and the reviews are flooding out now.
Yeah, I don't think I've spent so much time on YouTube as I have this week, if I'm being perfectly honest. So
exactly that. So excellent. And last, but obviously no way least, welcome back to the show again for a repeat visit, Steel Rain. How the devil are you?
Hey, what's going on, Flap Man crew, man? It is I, and I am he, the one and only Steel Rain. For those who don't know, you could just call me Steel, and I'm just here to provide excellent service, man. I'm just here to give y'all a good time to end this excellent console generation. I guess it depends on your perspective. Little caffeine jump right there, but other than that, man, I'm just excited to be here. I again want to thank you for allowing the rain to be part of your GPG kingdom. Puxley, I love what y'all do, man, and yeah, man, I'm excited for the topics tonight. Got some fire topics for y'all, man, and let's get into it, man.
Yeah, let's definitely do that. And to be honest, you hit upon quite a good point, because I've obviously been counting down about saying goodbye to the Xbox One. And a few people have pointed out saying, well, actually, we're not all lucky enough to have managed to get ourselves a pre-order and stuff, which, I do acknowledge. And it's not necessarily a goodbye to the Xbox One generation, but it is an acknowledgement about how much fun I've had out of it. And anyone who obviously does have a pre-order and have got a new Xbox coming this week, or even PlayStation, it's we probably won't be picking up our original Xbox One controller too soon. I guess it's going to be Series X and S all the way forwards from now, I'm guessing. But well, yeah, that trailer 7 years ago, it was all full of promise, and I'm guessing when obviously Microsoft first put that trailer together, they were incredibly excited, as they are now, about the upcoming generation. And they had a good generation, but it didn't get off to the best of starts, to be honest. And I don't think any of us need to go over all of the rocky start that the Xbox One generation got off to. But it was quite surprising, because Phil Spencer he's done some interviews recently, and he was saying that actually it wasn't just obviously the hardware, that they didn't have enough software and first party studios. They'd kind of neglected them a little bit. And obviously, as we know with software and game development, if you do close the floodgates on the cache, it does take a little while for this to become obvious. And the problem is, obviously, halfway through this generation, or towards the end of the generation, kind of Phil Spencer realized that there was a huge gap, and he's opened up the floodgates again. But again, we're kind of caught in the middle, waiting for all of these sort of games to come across. So let's go to you first, Scott, then, if you don't mind. I think the Xbox 360 era was full of some great titles for the Xbox brand, big titles, perhaps not so much so for the Xbox One. But do you think Microsoft might have taken their foot off the gas and kind of neglected the first party titles a little bit?
Yeah, I think I think if you ask anybody who's even remotely interested in gaming, and they'll say, back in 2013, Microsoft just simply hadn't invested in first party the way that they really needed to. They had, as you say, taken the eye off the ball somewhat. I think if you compare that to now, how many studios we got to now? Is it
23? Yeah.
23, sorry. I think back then, what was it, 7, if I can recall. Very few first party studios, and essentially we'll get into this, I think, throughout the topic, so I won't say everything just now, but it was essentially I guess a consequence of Microsoft's position, or sorry, Xbox's position within Microsoft, and whether they actually truly believed in that particular division and give them the resources they needed to succeed. And ultimately, the answer to that question is no. They didn't get the resources that they need, or needed, apologies. So they weren't in a position to actually succeed on the first party front. So yeah, it was really interesting though, because you look at that first trailer you played there, and the launch of the Xbox One did have some good games, and there were some good games at that original E3 conference. You're displaying Rise here, and that was obviously one of the exclusive launch titles for the Xbox One, and that still holds up today, at least graphically, as well as some other titles. So I think, just to sort of answer your question, I think that's just, they took the eye off the ball, and they let that side of things slip.
It's a shame, isn't it? Because, like you say, the Gears of War kind of first came about during the 360 era, so they were making some big IPs and made these sort of things happen. It's just a tragedy that they kind of let it slip, really, during the Xbox One sort of generation, isn't it?
Yeah, Gears of War was, I guess, essentially second party originally, though, wasn't it? Obviously, it was an Epic game developed by Epic, published by Microsoft, and then Microsoft ended up purchasing it from Epic. So even that game wasn't truly first party, I guess. They may have owned the IP originally, but they didn't develop it in house until Black Tusk was renamed Coalition. So it was such a shame, because if you look at what Microsoft have done over the past 7 years, imagine where they could be had they made that amount of progress from a much better starting position. But unfortunately, they've been playing catch up for a long, long time now.
Well, hopefully they've kind of done that bit now, and they've obviously brought in some huge studios to help assist with that. And I think the Series X generation is going to be the one where it all starts to come back together. Just before I carry on, I've neglected the chat a little bit. I need to thank everyone in the chat. I think we've got record numbers already. I don't think we've kind of had 24 perhaps this early in the show already. So thanks everyone for being here. We've got some new names in the chat as well. So thanks for being here. We'll give you some shouts out later. And one thing else I neglected to mention at the top of the show is actually we've got a 3-month Game Pass Ultimate giveaway to give away. Pucks, are we able to see numbers of the chat? Is that something we can do?
I can have a look and quickly setting it up.
Yeah, if you can. So what we normally do is however many subs we have on the channel, whoever comments, so let's say, I think it's 563 before we went live. So the 563rd comment will win the 3-month Game Pass Ultimate. We've got Wakanda Xbox News today to thank for that, Coach. So thank you very much, my friend. I can see you in the chat. It's always great to have your support. It's going to be a great show, to be honest. And like I say, we're always happy to give those codes away. And thankfully, the people that have won them to date are very grateful, and they're kind of new to the Game Pass. We're quite lucky like that. But right, still rain. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, Kinect. Well, the machine obviously launched with Kinect, and as Scott has kind of alluded to, Microsoft kind of neglected their first-party studios. Do you think Microsoft thought that sort of that motion sensing, a little bit like the Wii, was the way forward for the Xbox One, and that they were just going to try and tap into the sort of casual gamer market a little bit more?
Let's be honest, man. If we really look back on it, if you think at the time, Wii was also doing something similar, and they were getting a lot of attention from it. And I feel like when Microsoft tried to join that fight, but again, as we also think back, Microsoft didn't take gaming serious either. So I feel like the Kinect was honestly ahead of its time, if we really want to be honest with it. Because if we look now, we have Alexa, we have your personal assistants, we got Siri, we got Bixby, we got our own personal assistants on our phone. So why wouldn't we have it in our consoles? It's just to have something that was external at the time, also add on to the current price of the console, making it the more expensive console and the less powerful console at the time. It just wasn't a good move, along with also trying to introduce everyone to a more digital age. Because I mean, I always try to harken it back to, I saw the path that Microsoft was trying to take in 2013, 2014, when they announced everything's going to be online. You need to make sure you have a good connection. These things are going to start carrying over. And you really saw that because they took the cloud very seriously. And we see how that's played out to this point today, where it's really been essentially the backbone to their service, because your games can come over and your saves are there. You have access to all the games that you have purchased over the years, and that is just a fantastic thing. So it just really shows you the time, the effort, the energy that Xbox has had to put in over the years. Do I think that having the Kinect then was a bad move? Not necessarily. I just feel like they were ahead of the time, and it didn't live up to what it needed to be. It wasn't competitive enough when you can't compete with Wii Bowling on the Kinect. It just wasn't it didn't work as well, and it wasn't appealing enough. The games weren't there. You're not Nintendo, where they've always tried to be innovative and they're just going to sell regardless because it's Nintendo. It was a misstep, but Microsoft saw it. I feel like they were trying to do too many things at one time. And that's what really hurt them, along with making this such a big promise and not having any games behind you. It's even rubbed off in 10 years later, as you see with Halo, for example. It's just, again, there's another mishap, but you've fixed everything else up to this point. Now, again, it's come down to the games. Are we really going to tread down this path again? I don't necessarily believe so. Microsoft has all the right cards in play, but we can also move into more of a chess game now. And I feel like Microsoft is just a couple steps away from saying check. And
do you think they pushed the Kinect too hard back in the day then? Because I would have assumed that it would have been quite easy for them to actually think, you know what, let's bundle the Xbox One without a Kinect. Let's make it, I don't know, $100, £100 cheaper. Obviously it's, they're never going to claw the power narrative back. But if they can actually become, come in under the PS4 price wise, it just seems strange that they never actually did that. They stuck with the Kinect, they stuck by its side, as it were. And it just makes me wonder if they perhaps went in a little too deep with Kinect and kind of promised a little too much.
No, I would definitely have to agree with that. I mean, again, when I say that they were kind of ahead of the time, that's what I mean by, and that's kind of why I say why I also will agree that they were pushing it very hard, and people didn't want it. That wasn't at the point in gaming that we were at that point. There was a better alternative. Even when you look at PlayStation, there's just a better alternative right now. And even in that space, we're still not there yet. I do feel like they did push it too hard. But again, they pushed it too hard, but they were also doing too many things at one time, and that's what really affected it. But we see where they're at right now. Things are moving in the right direction. They're making moves that nobody could ever anticipated. But if you have your feet on the ground and you're paying attention to what the streets are saying, it was obvious the future path that they were trying to go down, and we see that with where we're at right now.
Yeah, they do certainly seem to be able to listen, or they certainly listen to the community a lot more than they obviously did back in those days. Because I think a lot of people, had they knew that it was absolutely coming with Kinect and was going to be less powerful, more expensive, would have probably voiced their opinions. But I think Microsoft were a little too stubborn back in those days to have possibly, changed the narrative.
For sure, Microsoft tried to bulldog it. They tried to bulldog it, and it wasn't going to work. You had a whole device that was taking away power from your console. Like that makes no sense. You're already the underpowered console. You were already charging more. Like it was. I didn't understand at the time why they were forcing it down people's throats. But then it was like, man, I just really want to say I see the bigger picture though. I see what they're trying to do. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. VJ, did you ever go on the Kinect? Did you ever play on the Kinect?
No, thank God.
You didn't. It was
no,
okay. You know what? It was quite fun. There was a little bit of a football game. You know, they did a bowling, trying to emulate the Wii bowling thing. It was kind of okay, but it wasn't worth the cost. I mean, what do you think went wrong with regards to the lack of studios and things like that?
There's a few things that Steel Rain hit on, and I'm sitting here like everybody else. I have a SeriesX on order. It's the only next-gen machine I have on order, and there's an interesting couple of points that he made that I'm going to sort of jump on the back of. I think the lack of first-party games, because the past is in the past, so the lack of the first-party games on the Xbox Series X is visibly a real, if not big problem right now at launch, and especially throughout the launch window. I don't have visibility. I think Phil, it was appointed back in 2013, 14, something like that. He's had 6 years as a head of Xbox. He's spent a considerable amount of money in any walk of life. I think in acquiring a lot of studios, and until we see what I want to see, I guess, is a system seller. I know it's subjective, system seller or something in the vicinity or semblance of a commercial hit or even something that achieves critical acclaim. I think the jury still needs to be out in those terms. For me, Xbox hasn't remedied the same issues, because I'm sort of comparing the two launches, failings and criticisms laid at the doorstep that plagued the announcement and or launch of was it 2013 Xbox One?
Yeah.
And now the Xbox Series X. Look, Halo's, let's put that aside. It's an unmitigated disaster. But then you've had offerings in recent times from Ninja Theory and Rare, and they've put out content. Is it Sea of Thieves and Bleeding Edge? Which are average at best, and have done which have done really little, in my opinion, to nothing in generating hype or build the Xbox brand, which I think is really crucial this time around. I'm in no way sort of diminishing or disrespecting the time, effort, or creativity poured into these games by the respective creators, but I would like to express also that I have no quarrel or argument or contempt, nor do I wish to change any fan's opinion in whatever they find comfort, joy, and pleasure in. It's all good and absolutely fine, and it's absolutely your right to do so. I'm simply suggesting and pointing to the caretakers, head of internal studios, and that we look to foster talent, which is sort of so far, in my opinion, again, has culminated in poor first-party output. What's being done to address these issues next time around, or in fact this time around, right? If not 7 years ago, are we just expected to purchase a Series X because Senua Sagas 2 and Everwild look decent enough in their respective CG trailers and just blindly believe that both games will be AAA and something to behold? Subjectively speaking, right, at the end of the day, great games that are truly capture the imagination are few and far between. We know that even the best studios struggle, right, at some point. I think we need to ensure we're mindful and vigilant towards games continually being truly special experiences. My fear is that over an elongated period of time from now going forward, we're going to become sort of victims of systematic pruning, being stripped of sort of like a sophistication and conception of a AAA game when it comes to Xbox. Now, and I know that's something that's been sort of touched upon severally, but I wanted to touch on it a bit more because I think it's important, especially if you're going to invest in the system this time around, effectively sort of being dumbed down, right, in terms of what to expect as a benchmark and make do. That will sort of partly be, for commercial reasons. I can understand that, right? And I've outlined that before from a Microsoft and Xbox perspective. Most of the human race is susceptible to having their intelligence reduced. Only Playground Games and the coalition can conceivably, I would say, hold their heads high, if not simply above water. And I think In Exile did a really good job with, was it Wasteland 3? Yeah, Wasteland 3. I'm looking forward to play. The rest flatter to deceive or yet to deliver or showcase what they can truly achieve through. Although as I think it was SX2 that mentioned, right, it was Puxley that suggested, right. I think it might have been before the pre-show that that limitations and deadlines are in place. So you can point to Mojang, is it, and Minecraft, but it was yet again acquired and steadily generated income. And interestingly enough, I've just noticed that microtransactions have been introduced, I believe, no doubt at the behest of Xbox. Okay, fine. Xbox has acquired 23 studios. Are, a pay-to-win strategy, since it's clear Xbox cannot truly say to us that they foster creativity within the current regime of producers and managers in charge. And because they simply sort of cannot guarantee the quality, I think, from what AAA games can do. No one can. It's very, very difficult. And you could say then Sony's business model is even more risky. So our Xbox offering these games for free in a subscription-based business model, which will include microtransactions, which still gives me pause for concerns. Because at the end of the day, even though they've bought these studios, there's no moral achievement in purchasing or owning 23 studios, as there is no moral achievement in having large breasts, a small nose, blue eye, or red hair, right? And it's not a cause for me at this moment for celebration. It highlights, for me, Microsoft's deficiencies as a whole, as far back as the 80s with Bill Gates versus Steve Jobs, leadership styles, right? Xbox business model is discreetly veering towards the Activision. I'm wrapping up here, Flap, just in case you're wondering. And Activision, King, and Blizzard combined, and the amalgamated commercial model is just something that came up this week that got me thinking, which currently generates more in DLC and microtransactions income in terms of $1 billion, I think, in the recent quarter. And theoretically, if you extrapolate that out, that equates to $4 billion a year, compared to, I think it's Xbox's, what they generate $2.5 billion based $15 a month based on their 15 million subs, right? So Xbox fans sort of now, up until the build up to the launch, right, have been pointing to the medium, which is obviously, we understand it's delayed, arguably the only decent original Xbox Series X launch title. And so are we, as Xbox fans or gamers, hardcore light users, it doesn't matter what walk of life you're from, are we supposed to get excited about a developer that previously no one had pretty much heard of in Blooper, let alone know the country that they're actually originate or in fact based in? My point is, we deserve far, far better, right? And I'm not letting Xbox... Not for the moment. I'm only scratching the surface here with what I've got to say, but I'm going to stop. I want to come back here in the future, Flat, if I'm still invited onto the show, and be able to argue the opposite. But Xbox still has a lot of thinking to do, changes to make, and work to do.
I do agree. I would say that Sea of Thieves has been a success, and is kind of is definitely an Xbox brand. I think when I think of Sea of Thieves, I think of Xbox straight away, and they do kind of showcase it and stuff. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. That's the thing, it's not Gears of War, it's not a Halo, and that's fine. It's kind of its own thing, isn't it?
My nephew loves it, Flap.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's kind of a Minecraft thing almost, in the fact that it's found a niche, and the people that love it absolutely love it.
If I can, I want to kind of touch on what VJ was saying. Not to interrupt. Just to kind of build off of that, I definitely feel where you're coming from, VJ. But the main thing that I feel like, because you can definitely focus on those points, but something else that I really want people to focus on is, as Microsoft being the little brother as far as it is in the console space, and for them to bring everything that they've brought up to this point, yes, the games have been, lackluster. Yes, they haven't necessarily proven what they can do with a developer, or, we see that with 343. Let's be honest. I mean, people give 343 a lot of flack, but let's be honest, 343 was with Bungie the entire time they were making Halo. The fact that they are struggling with Halo right now makes absolutely no sense to me. And that is a fail on Xbox, but that's okay, because Microsoft has acquired these other studios and are going to continue to buy other studios, because they know that is something that they have to do. Sony is on the brink, or the edge, or on the cliff of the mountain. They are a game away from failing. And that is the difference. That's what makes Sony so great, is that the fact that Sony can consistently put out AAA games that get the audience's attention and have become staples. If they ever put out 2 or more games in a year that are not successful, Sony will be seeing their way out of the door. And that is the other side of the spectrum that a lot of people have to pay attention to, because again, Microsoft is going to be here regardless. Microsoft is built off of services. We see why people love Xbox now, why people enjoy Xbox or Microsoft in total now, because of what they're doing in the gaming space, because of what they're doing as an overall service, especially on PC also. I mean, come on, we have to be honest on that side too. The services, like it's unmeasurable. You can't compete with it. There's not somebody else that can compete with it at this point, and they're continuously working on customer service and building on their platform and continue to build their service to be something that you just cannot deny. And I don't want to get too deep and just get like trade off the topic too far. But I just feel like that's on the other side of the spectrum too with it. Yes, there's a lot of things to prove. There's a lot of things that need to happen. But if we're looking at the plays right now, especially as we head into this next generation, Microsoft has said, we do not need you to buy our console. Of course, they need to sell consoles, but they do not need for you to buy their consoles. If they tap into the cell phone industry, at least in the slightest, that's 2 billion people. Even if they only reached 20% of that, dude,
yeah,
that would set them on a whole nother level, and it's just a whole nother level.
No, it's an interesting point. There's been people kind of agreeing and kind of disagreeing with what VJ said as well. I guess, it comes down to how you feel about the developers and what kind of credence you put in their history and their past, I suppose.
Right. It's just here. I'm just playing devil's advocate. So I mean, we never know what's really going on. So.
Yeah, I'd agree with fun speculation on a few of these. Yeah, obviously Playground. VJ mentioned Playground. Turn 10. I don't think they've got anything to prove. In fact, if anything, we expect a top flight game out of those. They're the ones that always seem to push the technology. Coalition. I don't think they've done so bad. The Coalition, to be honest, I think Gears 4 and 5 were fantastic. I'm really looking forward to getting back into those. Rare. Yeah, I suppose Rare is a little bit more of a. I suppose, like Rare it or hate it.
Rare just needs to bring Banjo back. That's all we need from Rare. we need to bring Banjo in.
No, exactly. I mean, they do kind of have that option, and I think Microsoft, unless they were going to create a studio from the beginning, like they did with the Initiative, and wait 5, 6, even 7 years for that quality game to come out, then like VJ says, it doesn't give you much of a chance to or point to heavily invest into the Xbox system. But having paid and bought the studios that they have, and it does, I know Sony have kind of pointed the finger and said, well, they're just cutting the corner. They're not putting the time and effort into creating the sort of studios from scratch. And, you could argue that Sony have done similar with Insomniac and people like that. But, I think it's all Microsoft could have done to fill that gap, to be honest. And my God, did they go and spend a big ton of cash? Yeah, VJ, I agree. We are in a gap. I still don't think that's not a reason to not invest into the Xbox Series X for a lot of people. Perhaps some, I get that. Perhaps some PlayStation people are still thinking, well, I'd rather my, 1 or 2 high quality titles a year than 4 or 5, perhaps lesser AAA titles. Depends on your philosophies, I suppose. It's a very interesting point that you've raised, actually. Puxley, what's your take on this? And what's the chat been up to?
Well, one, where would you like me to start first? And would you mind just reiterating the question you'd like me to answer a bit more specifically?
Well, where do you think? Well, to be honest, going back to the Xbox One era, that was kind of the original question, I guess. Where and why do you think Xbox went wrong during this Xbox One era with their first-party studios? I mean, why didn't they invest more heavily? Was it an ethos within the company, do you think? Do you think they were, with the Kinect, more focused on the casual sort of gamer and going for that kind of audience?
So I don't want to take too much of a back step from where the current conversation is going, but I mean, my initial thoughts kind of come from rewatching that trailer at the very beginning, actually, because just from watching that, you can kind of see that it wasn't just about the games as what most people, especially now, want from a games console. It was very much trying to do everything. And that trailer as well wasn't just iterating that, yes, you can play games on the new Xbox, but you can also watch all of your entertainment, hook it up to your TV, and you can even Skype using the Kinect. I think that was... I'd actually forgotten that was a more integrated feature back then. I thought that was at the time, very interesting. I think I saw in the chat at the beginning of the show as well, a lot of people saying that Microsoft were ahead of the time and maybe a bit too future thinking in terms of where the world was and where it was going to go. But I think, back then it was difficult to determine, right? Because as we've said many times on other shows, what we kind of see as normal now in terms of streaming tech and, you know, movies and films and movies and music and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't all quite commonplace back then. A lot of people were still starting to buy into the whole Netflix and Spotify vibes and all that kind of stuff. So I think it was maybe too future thinking, as a lot of people in the chat have also indicated, which, as we know, has not done Xbox too well at the beginning. And I think what Phil Spencer said as well in that interview quote that you said earlier is very much true as well. There was a lot of issues with, lack of first party specifically. I mean, as the others were speaking more at the beginning of this as well. I mean, it reminded me of an Xbox exclusive that was due to come out called Scalebound. Do you remember this?
Mm-hmm.
This was kind of, I think it was originally developed from 2013 and then it was cancelled in 2017. And this was meant to be kind of one of the more big exclusives coming to Xbox, which got cancelled, which I think at that time, at least, put a lot of people on edge, I guess, as to, you know, why, what is the Xbox doing for us in terms of exclusives? Why would you pick this over the PlayStation?
You are the prime example of someone that, you know, we played lots of games during the Xbox 360 era, and you kind of moved over to PS4. So what about what made you do that? Was it the games? Was it the lack of?
I think ultimately it is always the games, isn't it? I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there who like to have a console that can also do, you know, Netflix or whatever other streaming service integrated.
Can't they?
That's what I mean, as an in-console app. But for me, I solely want a console for the gaming, right? Because I already have a Netflix subscription and everything else, or Spotify, whatever, and I've got other machines and boxes in my house that can do those. You know, my radio, for example, has, you know, Spotify and Alexa built in, and it's more easy to use that than to hook up an Xbox or a PlayStation, right? So for me, a console is just for gaming. Well, again, at least for me in my own household, and PlayStation, at least at the time, why I kind of moved over there. I mean, I'd always had a bit of a soft spot for PlayStation anyway, because it's kind of what I grew up with, right? So that was kind of, there's a little bit of, I suppose, sentimental value there, again, in the brand. But equally, I think during this, well, is still the current gen, I guess, there was a lot of titles which I felt were very, well, Sony's taken a very story-driven cinematic approach to this gen of a lot of their titles. You know, look at the Last of Us, even the God of War, you know, even Uncharted and Uncharted 4, which did very well when it released back in, I think, 2014 or 15, whenever that was. 2016 even, I might be getting my dates wrong. But I think Sony have done very good at pushing the cinematic single-player narrative experiences, whereas Xbox, I think, this time around have mainly gotten a lot of third parties, I'd say, but a lot of them are kind of multiplayer focused as well. I think a lot of people really enjoy the Xbox Live ecosystem. And I do sit in that camp as well, because even though I had a PS4, I've never subscribed to PlayStation Now, or the PlayStation Plus. Yeah, because for me, I was never bothered about the multiplayer in that case. But I do see Xbox as the multiplayer machine for me. So I think that's the difference as well. I think it's probably a mixture of, you know, do you see one console as giving you one type of experience and the other one does something else? And I've actually seen this kind of topic of conversation on Twitter recently as well. Even people saying that even going into the PS5, that Sony are very much focusing on those kind of big graphical cinematic single player narratives, whereas Xbox is mainly probably seen as the multiplayer machine. And I don't think that's completely wrong, if I'm perfectly honest, but I don't think that's a problem either.
It certainly was back in the day. I know Microsoft were pushing the sort of well, you know, it kind of falls into the always online thing as well, doesn't it? Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I've got to be honest, I had kind of forgotten that was the narrative once upon a time, that, you know, Microsoft was all about multiplayer games. And like you say, even to this day, you know, Sony's, you know, obviously the Sony machines do multiplayer as much as the Xbox ones do. But, you know, that focus on the big single player cinematic games on Sony is still very prominent, isn't it? And a little bit like Steel Rain said, you know, thank God they sell very well, because you know, they have to sell to actually make their money and obviously bolster the brand itself. Whereas obviously with multiplayer games, you can get away with things like microtransactions and things like that. And
that's also kind of what I think is interesting about the pricing structures of next gen as well, because, you know, we've all had the arguments of pros and cons between, you know, the $70 versus Game Pass and all the rest of it. But, you know, kind of looking into people's comments on Twitter and stuff over the last couple of weeks about that, and again looking back into the narratives of how a lot of people tend to view PlayStation versus Xbox, I can see why the narrative does exist. You know, Sony are putting a lot of money into those single player experiences, and I think it could to a degree. I mean, again, we've had this chat before, so I'm not going to delve into it, but of course, you know, development costs go up, so therefore more money goes into these projects and you need to recoup that back somehow. So how do you do that price hike? But without going into that, at the other side of the coin is that you could argue, or people have argued online, that what Sony are also investing in isn't just, more money for a bigger project. It's actually putting more effort, more time, money and time into giving you, the player, a fantastic single-player cinematic experience, which you can love and enjoy, like going to the cinema. Whereas the other side of the coin is that you have something like Game Pass, which people are saying that, at least as of today, doesn't give you much that's brand new, and you've got this library of older titles that you can go back and enjoy. But I don't think that's a bad thing either, because I think what a lot of people don't seem to potentially think about is that Game Pass as it is now isn't how it's always going to be. I mean, the whole point of these acquisitions is that we're going to get brand new first-party titles coming to that service as well. And Microsoft, I think, will also get their nice pool of big AAA single-player narrative experiences, as well as the, the big multiplayer titles, which I think Xbox is known and loved for.
Yeah, well, it was mentioned that Fable by Playground Games was going to be a single player predominantly. I don't think there may be some kind of multiplayer elements, but it's not going to be a multiplayer game, I don't believe. I think that's already been mentioned and asked of Playground Games. And to be honest, Microsoft will end up with a huge variety of things, I guess. It's just unfortunate that we're in the waiting point at the moment to wait to see what lands. VJ was obviously talking about, the quality of the games as well. It's all very well having lots of games, but they need to be of a certain quality.
Yeah, I mean, as when VJ was saying about that, which again, I'm not saying I agree or disagree, anything like that. I think they're all very, very valid points from both VJ and Still Rain as well. But I also did see some comments in the chat from, I think it was, I believe, from Shizno Elite as well, and some others, which mentioned about how I don't think that, as a group of fans and players, whatever, I don't think we should forget or neglect the fact that this year has been a very difficult year for the world, right? And developers, not just specifically, but at least in the gaming sphere, developers would have struggled with development progress and working from home. So I think the argument of not having enough first-party titles at launch to maybe do you buy into it now or not? I mean, I understand the narrative. Of course, you want to buy a new console for those brand new games which are trying to showcase the system. But I don't think we should forget that, given the circumstances of the world at the moment, that this has been a very tough time for developers. And I think rightly so, a lot of progress has been slowed, and therefore release dates need to be pushed back.
Yeah, I do agree. But I think VJ's point was probably that, these problems were set many years ago, and although I do completely agree it's been an incredibly tough year for everyone, developers included, had there been more studios earlier during the Xbox One reign, if you see what I mean, there would probably be more options, come launch day, I suppose. But
yeah, that's true. I mean, this is what I mean. It's not, you can't be explicit when you're talking, right? It's very 50-50, I think.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Well, to make a quick shout out to the chat, most people have mentioned about Rise. I had an absolute blast playing this, and to think this game is 7 years old is phenomenal, because the quality of the graphics and stuff's phenomenal. It got caught up in the whole 900p war. And obviously 1080p makes you a better gamer, that kind of narrative, unfortunately. And Kinect was involved in this game early on. That kind of dragged it down. But it's a fantastic game. And the graphics, considering they're 7 years old, are phenomenal. They really do hold up even now, as you can probably see. And strangely enough, this is a single player game. Third person perspective single player game. Although there was multiplayer aspects to it. The main story was single player. So so big shout out to the chat. It's good to see some people. We've got Fun Speculation, Indie Gamer, and Neil Stubbs. Oh my goodness me, Fugly, Dragon Wolf, Wakanda Xbox news today. Yes, Pucks, are we on track to track the 563rd comment? Is that happening?
Yep. I've got it set up now, but we have got a bit of a way to go yet. So do you want to give a quick reminder for the new viewers?
That's fine. So we're giving away 3 months Game Pass Ultimate, guys, for whoever is the 563rd commenter or makes this 563rd comment in the live chat. 3 months Game Pass Ultimate will be yours. I will send you the code. Do with it as you will. If I'm guessing most people have Game Pass Ultimate. If you have a friend or family that doesn't, absolutely worth sharing it with those and just letting them know how fantastic this service is. Scott, do you think, I mean, obviously, how the Xbox One generation started to compare to how it ended up are kind of worlds apart almost. I'm guessing that you agree that they kind of turned it round in terms of perception to a certain degree. I know that they're not home and dry by a long shout at this moment in time. But I think it could be argued that Microsoft have managed to turn around people's perception slightly of the brand. I know the diehard PlayStation people will always possibly hate on Xbox, and lots of other people will as well. But do you think Xbox managed to turn it around? And if they did, what do you think the turning point of that was?
Yeah, I think they've not fully turned it around just yet. Because ultimately, as we've discussed, there is still that question mark over games. I think the big difference now is there is that potential for games, and not to go over old ground too much. Obviously, those studios that they've acquired gives. It makes the future look bright from a first-party perspective, where 7 years ago there really wasn't much of a future in terms of first-party because the development studios and the talent simply wasn't there. So I think what we've got now is we don't have the games, so the question mark remains there, but we do have the potential, which we should hopefully start seeing over the coming years. And just to touch on something Puck's mentioned there, because I know obviously COVID has hit game development and obviously a lot of industries very hard, but I personally don't think that would have made any difference to the launch of the Xbox Series X and S. I think if you look at the titles that are coming,
you mean from a hardware perspective or from games?
From a game's perspective, so with the exception of Halo Infinite, where they've sort of said COVID played an impact, I personally think that would have been delayed regardless. And then a lot of the other first-party games are probably at least a year or two off at this point anyway. So I'd say it was unlikely that any of them would come forward. So that question mark still does remain, and we've still got to wait and see what those games are like. Now, we know the games are coming, but the question mark is are they good? Are they going to be good AAA high quality games that people are going to be talking about and things like Game of the Year?
So what perspective are you talking about from there then? Because I'm guessing you've got a Series S or X lined up. So yep. They don't have to prove to you what games are coming. Who are we talking about? Who they have to prove to then? Do you think?
To I guess the people who bought a 360 who didn't buy a One. There's a massive amount of people, millions, tens of millions of people who were invested in the Xbox 360 who didn't come across the Xbox One, and for one reason or another ended up buying a PlayStation 4, which was kind of the obvious choice for a lot of people at the beginning of this gen, or have since maybe bought a Nintendo Switch or something else. So they still have to convince a lot of people, and the way that they do that is through quality first party content, I think. But what they have done over these past let's say 3 years, since about 2017, 2018, when Phil Spencer really managed to start flexing his muscles, I guess, as leader of Xbox, is they have changed that narrative where the argument isn't now, are the games coming? It's just now we've just got to wait and see a little bit. But I think the things that Microsoft have done, particularly with backwards compatibility, has really given Microsoft this almost what's the word I'm looking for? I guess this almost consumer-friendly nature that a lot of people seem to be drawn to,
okay.
where
That's an interesting
people
one.
are actually rooting for Microsoft in a lot of cases. I feel where maybe they weren't. They were, people were making fun of them back in 2013. Well, I think the narrative has changed slightly, where people do want Microsoft to succeed, but they just need a little bit more convincing, a little bit more proof. But I think the turning point was certainly it 2017 when Phil Spencer joined the board of Microsoft. I may be getting my dates mistaken. Maybe 2018.
He was appointed in 2014 as Xbox lead. And then in 2017, he was appointed the executive vice president of gaming, and then he sits on the senior leadership team as well at that point.
Yeah, so 2014 would have been obviously big, but to be perfectly honest, at that point, Microsoft and the Xbox division was still under the leadership of Terry Myson, I believe, who didn't end up leaving until I think 2017, maybe. A chat if you've met it, please correct me. Through a lot of things that I've read and heard and watched, from what I understand, Terry Myson really just didn't believe in Xbox as a division and really didn't give the division the funding it needed. And it wasn't until Phil got a seat at that board and started reporting directly into Satya Nadella that things really started to change. And that was evident when the checkbook came out. You know, when Phil was able to announce those new studios, that never would have happened under Terry Myerson, because he simply didn't believe in the Xbox division at the time. So the turning point, in my opinion, was when essentially Terry Myerson was kicked out of Microsoft, and Phil reported directly into Satya Nadella, and he was able to convince Microsoft and the leadership of Microsoft that it was a division worth investing in. And then unfortunately for Microsoft, and I guess us as gamers, is because that didn't happen until 2017, 2018, we're not going to see the rewards of that investment for another year or two. So it is coming. I'm pretty confident. I'm getting my Series X, and I'm looking forward to the content that's coming, but I'm also looking forward to playing the games that I'm currently playing, just the best possible versions of those. But I'm also confident that, 2021, 2022, that these quality first-party titles are coming. The one thing I will say is, though, the main thing that drew me to making sure I got a Series X on launch day, and was Halo Infinite, which is a little bit of a sad tale, unfortunately, because I'm a massive Halo fan. So I'm looking forward to that, regardless of when it comes. I really cannot wait for that game. Despite obviously it's rather lackluster shown in July. I'm really looking forward to that come next year. And I was always going to get an Xbox simply to play Halo Infinite. It's my favorite franchise that I've ever played. So that was always going to be enough for me personally, but that's obviously not enough for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And to be honest, VJ, I'm going to ask you the same question. I mean, in your opinion, do you think Microsoft were able to turn around some of the damage that they'd done in 2013? And if so, kind of when did that happen, and how did it happen?
I think there's SX2, Scott's points and opinions notwithstanding. I think we're simply at a point where Xbox have seemingly and theoretically set themselves up to at least replicate the success it once had with the Xbox 360. And I've said that several times, even on this show. The industry as a whole is what we have to look at. It's seen radical shifts, changes, consolidation, from the incredible rise of digital content consumption to carefully constructed, I should say, business models. That's where it stems from. Doesn't matter what business you're in. You have to be able to convince that this is a business model that will work longer term. They're all in the business to make money. Right. In fact, I would go as far as saying, it's a military science whereby consumers don't think twice now before spending billions on DLC and microtransaction. And I think that's very much going to be part of the future, especially in what Microsoft are offering us. Albeit in bite-sized, self sort of persuasion, digestible amounts, which we're happy to do so.
So do you think Microsoft have actually set themselves up in a position, in probably a stronger position than perhaps some of the competition, knowing that that's potentially the future then?
I think that you have a point, but I'm going to answer it in a slightly different way, and hopefully it answers but also raises some other questions. I think that, as I said, DLC, microtransactions, everyone's happy to do so because they're in small amounts while in the midst of having fun or indulging in gaming pleasure, shall we say. Not forgetting loot boxes, and of course, sort of corporations doing all they can to make the games industry a sustainable and less risky and more predictable investment. Because we've seen, Flap, many companies come and go, right, over the years, right? Many companies that hit hard times and have to merge. Look at Square Enix, for example. But by introducing what Microsoft has done is introduce a Game Pass, a subscription-based model for a guaranteed, if not predictable path for the course income stream. You did ask about Phil Spencer's appointment and what he's done, and has he built something, which is groundbreaking and so on and so forth. But my question, first of all, was who else were they going to appoint? I said several months ago that Xbox's division is simply adopting, or having been forced to adopt and implement, Microsoft's overarching, very successful corporate strategy, master plan, if you'd like to call it that, and forward-in-line synergy, which is to provide software and services on an ongoing subscription fee basis. It's proven. So it's what Satya and shareholders prefer, and I think that's what Phil was tasked with. Understand and no doubt told Phil that, here, this is our art of war mandate, that we want you to implement and make sure your division falls in line with Microsoft's master plan of predictable profitability or formulaic revenue and growth, because they have to think like that, Flat. We see the other side of it where it's dressed up with marketing and PR. I also said that Game Pass is akin to Microsoft 365. minus Excel, Word, Outlook, and probably PowerPoint for the foreseeable future until these games from these studios that have been bought, that have been with them for years and recently acquired. Phil is a corporate division head interface to the board, and I think that's been made pretty clear to me right now from what I've been hearing. So thank you for that, because I wasn't completely aware of that. He is absolutely and categorically proved that he is not a product development general, and he has said that himself live this week, and he's not involved in green lighting or seeing games till they're a couple of years away from release date, which was quite a surprise for me for someone that is a gamer. He said, look, he's busy, and so it's been passed off to somebody else, and that somebody else we all know is Matt Booty, right, who's been tasked and charged with running and orchestrating first-party game studios, and has shown himself to be, I can't put it in any other way, inefficient, inept, poor, you take your pick, or irresponsible even. I point to $500 million, however that's been invested in Halo Infinite, or just earmarked for it, and it hasn't all been spent. We don't know the numbers, right? But we've heard of that number, right? Whether it is official or rumored or whatever, I can't speak to that. And games sort of that need to be released over the next 6 to 12 to 18 months. And I'm sure Microsoft between now and, is it the Game Awards in December the 10th? We will see something, right? We always do, right? If any of us, what I'd like to say, if any of us on the panel or in the chat were handed Matt 500 million of our own money, right, we would have fired him by now and probably sued him, or at the very minimum. That's what happens in corporations, relieved him of his duties at the minimum. But I go back to, again, I think that it is a failing, and we can't deny it, right? That there is no games, first-party games at launch that we can admire, right? Halo, even though it was not great for Microsoft, and they've remedied that to a degree with buying Bethesda, I think it was a huge dodge by Sony, right? Because I'd like to see them how they would have been going up against it. I think it's a big miss in my personal opinion.
I think they bit off more than they can chew with Halo. I think what they should have done is made the best Halo game they could have done, and I'm not suggesting they're not doing that.
But on Unreal 4.
But yeah, exactly. And I think the scope that they've given themselves with Halo Infinite should have waited for a mid-gen kind of release. I know it would have sold lots of consoles, but there was also a risk of it not working, and unfortunately that's exactly where we are. That's
a game that would have built the brand. That's what I'm talking about. People saying that, I'm said something negative. No, I actually listened to what I actually said. I praised Playground Games. I praised Coalition. I praised In Exile. So it's really interesting to see what people's comments are. They're listening to points that I'm making, but not the overall picture that I'm creating. But what I'm saying is that Halo is astonishing at where it's at, and it beggars belief. It's just in my opinion, and from my time in the industry, he wouldn't still be there. I have the same question for Phil that I've had when I first joined podcasting. I'm very, 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 what's wrong with being creatively ruthless? Because I don't see that side to him. And any Xbox fan tell me, right, where my thoughts and theories are incorrect or invalid. Just in a normal walk of life, right? I'm more than happy to be humbled in front of facts that open up in front of me. So
and to be honest, fun speculations mentioned that Xbox failed 3 to 4 years ago on the planning side of things, and I completely agree. No, completely agree. Can't disagree with that whatsoever. Still Rain, on the back of that, again, I'll probably pose you the same question. Actually, do you think Microsoft were able to turn this around in people's opinions? Oh, and the other thing I wanted to perhaps ask you is, where do you think the Xbox One X sat, and who was that for? Do you think Microsoft created that just for the diehard Xbox fans anyway, or do you think they were trying to steal a little bit of the power thunder back from some of the Sony diehards?
Let's be completely honest. As far as I'll tackle the second question first. For the One X itself, the One X was purely for the hardcore and for them to win that power narrative back. That was just I feel like that was just a play, a money play to see, feel it out, just to say that they have the power in that generation. Again, it's a little too late. Too late for that. Again, hardcores like myself, I went out and got a One X because I just wanted to have it. And there's nothing wrong with having that extra power. But it was just a play more so to just to get that power narrative back. And then as far as the first question, Microsoft has pulled themselves back, and kind of to like backpack off of what VJ was saying, because I mean I definitely agree with what he's saying, because to a certain extent, again, the reason Halo keeps being brought up, and I hate the fact that it always has to come up, but at the same time, I'm glad it does, because it shows people the impact, the effect, the overall feel that Halo has on the majority. It's not just us, the hardcore, it's also as the consumer. When you're looking at them more, so that's what's going to pull them to that box. And there's no excuse for why I wasn't ready. Do I feel like it could have been because of the pandemic? Yes. I mean, again, let's be honest. These people aren't in their offices. They're not in their buildings. They're not working side by side. They're doing things from home, and have been doing things from home since the top of the year. And that's something else that a lot of people have to keep in mind. Do I want to use that? That's not an excuse for 343. That's not an excuse for anything that's going on right now, because again, Microsoft has always seen that they've been weak in the game as far as delivering solid AAA games that people want. That's going to develop your brand. That's going to attract the consumer to you, which is why they simply lost with just the overall power narrative this beginning of this last gen. And because, again, PlayStation didn't have any games for real. We have games like you see on screen right now, Rise, that came out that obviously, yeah, it was 900p.
You know what? That's a very good question. Let's not blow this out of proportion, because the PS4 launched with very, very few launch titles as well, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, and then it's the same thing now. Again, PlayStation's coming out with a couple games. After you play those couple games, guess what you're going to play? Multiplayer games, multi-plat games. And guess what they're going to play well at? That's what Microsoft is playing at, because they're just trying to win the consumer back. Because at the end of the day, that's what the consumer is going to care about. And that's, I feel like we as the hardcore kind of take that for granted, because I mean, we always have this like kind of like this attack mentality for for the developers and everything else. We have every right to be, especially when it comes to Microsoft, because they just haven't proven themselves. You keep spending money. You're saying that you're competitive. You're saying you're doing all these great things, but then again, Sony is still beating you out for some reason. So boom, as you see going into this next generation, which makes this next generation so great, is they're sticking to what they're good at. Microsoft is good at services. Microsoft knows they can pull you in with services. So for them to be going into this next move, into this next gen with services, is going to be their trump card. And they have to stick to that. Well, the games, unfortunately, we're going to have to wait for the games. And it is what it is at this point. Are there going to be good games in between? Yes. I mean, you're going to see Godfall is going to come out for the PS5, and then it's going to come out 6 months later for the Xbox Series X, and you'll see that it plays better over here. Or maybe it doesn't. We don't know, and we'll see what the numbers play out. But right now, as it goes on paper, we're seeing that, and with the comparison videos I've seen so far, it's kind of neck and neck. But overall, I mean, the series consoles are out overperforming, and the Series S is becoming more and more, prevalent. There's a reason that console's there. There's just so many different avenues I feel like Microsoft is taking. They've fine-tuned what they were weak in, but they have to continue to beat on that horse, for lack of a better saying. Just because if they continue to let up, it's just Sony's going to continue to hold that place, because that's what Sony's good at. But if Microsoft can continue to build, I mean, it's all about competitiveness and giving the consumers more overall, and us as the hardcore understanding, getting into conversations like these, for example, with VJ saying the things that he's saying, things that I'm saying, that Scott's saying, that you're saying, Flap, and just overall what we communicate, they listen, and it's a good medium between that, and it's always good to have these conversations, because it's things that we have to pay attention to. So
no, I completely agree. And I think one thing they have done is they've tried to turn the narrative around. And I know they can't escape the games here and now narrative. That's fine, but they have bought these studios. They've got 28 studios, got 35 projects coming, and I know, I guess Microsoft are relying slightly on people's faith that these studios. And when it does come to proving things, I would argue that Bethesda don't really have anything to prove. I know Fallout 76 and to a certain degree, perhaps Elder Scrolls Online was a little bit of a misstep, and it does come down to that microtransaction. It's almost a game that's purely built just to bleed microtransactions and stuff. But I think people like ID, Bethesda, they've got a proven track record. I know they're yet to prove themselves being funded by Microsoft. And with any luck, Microsoft will leave them to do their thing. Who knows?
Right.
But,
right. And just to kind of play devil's advocate off of that, I mean, yes, they do have Bethesda, but me personally, I do feel like Bethesda has something to prove. Honestly, the only game that I've really ever recognized from them, other than Elder Scrolls, and that was only Elder Scrolls Online, was Fallout New Vegas, and that wasn't even 100% them. So it's like
but that's interesting. You say, do you not like Fallout 3 or 4 or Elder Scrolls Skyrim?
Me personally, I've never been. That's the series has just never caught my eye. I've watched my fiance completely pour hundreds of hours into New Vegas, and I see the attraction there. But within the other Fallout games, they've never pulled me. And then with everything that has gone on here recently, it doesn't seem like they're. I kind of feel like they're overrated. But they have potential, especially now, because it seems like when you look at those situations, it was always money for them. They didn't have enough money, they didn't have enough time to put out these games. And now they do. And we're going to see that as we go into this next generation. Is Bethesda really that king? Was Bethesda really worth it? Yes, they have potential, but with I think what makes it more unique. Is you got to pay attention to who the studios Microsoft is grabbing. It's not just anybody like Amazon or Google would do because they just want to get content. Microsoft is being very specific, if you notice, on who they're grabbing, why they're grabbing them, the content that they have within those companies, and being able to mesh those ideas together, mesh those different brands together, is going to open up so many more ideas and so many more advantages for Microsoft over on the long run. And I know it's so difficult for people to continue to wait for that long run. But again, if you can be a multi-console owner, I feel like this is definitely going to be a gen for that. Especially with Microsoft giving you so many options. But that's their strong point. That's what they're doing. That's their services. But again, it's just hitting on that same point.
Okay. Well, Puxley, you are the sort of the breathing example that Microsoft must have turned something around, because you didn't buy an Xbox One, but you are getting a Series X, and the same for VJ as well. I guess you guys are both getting Series X's, so something's been turned around for you guys to want to buy those. What is it for you, Puxley? What's made you decide to get back onto the Xbox brand this time around?
Value is probably my very, very short answer, because for me, as I said earlier, PlayStation's always had a soft spot for me, but then I remember way back in the day, really wanting the PlayStation 3 over the Xbox. I didn't really care much for the original Xbox. I didn't have it. I didn't really have much experience with it. Saw the Xbox 360. Wasn't quite sure what to think of it, but due to life and family circumstances at the time, I was gifted a 360, and that really roped me in. And I absolutely love the platform. And as history now tells, the 360 kind of won outright, if you want to put it that way, compared to the PlayStation. But from what we've seen from the 2013 Xbox and all the rest of it, there was a lot of kind of wrong decisions, I guess. At least I wasn't in the best position at the time anyway to be able to.
They made mistakes. That's what this whole sort of section of this podcast is about, I guess. The mistakes that were made.
Yeah, but say for me, it was, at the time at least, because I think I'm probably the youngest on the panel, I guess. So I wasn't, in the best financial position to be able to just go out and buy games every other week or month or whatever. So I kind of had to pick carefully. But at the same time, a lot of my friends as well at the time, like they jumped ship to Xbox from Xbox to PlayStation. Mainly because of the games and the content that was there, and obviously because of the mixed and potentially just wrong messaging from Xbox at the start. Like Xbox at the time, just due to the messaging, just didn't look like the system to have for what is now the current gen.
So what's changed?
For me, I think it is Game Pass for me, which I know I advocate it a lot, and I don't want to kind of overstate it, but at the same time, that's kind of what's turned it around for me. I mean, even throughout me owning a PlayStation 4, I've always looked forward to watching Xbox's E3 shows as well as PlayStation and obviously Nintendo and all the others. But since Game Pass got introduced, I remember seeing it. I think it was E3 2018, I believe. It might have been a bit earlier when they first announced that this kind of project was a thing. And for the longest time, I kind of thought, what is the point of this? Are people really going to buy into this? Why would you not just buy the games, right? I remember having that kind of train of thought. And it wasn't until 2019 when they said, it's coming to PC and you can try it for a cheaper price or whatever, through the beta stages. And I thought, well, at the time, I just treated myself to a gaming PC. So why not? I'll pay my £3.99 and try it out. And for me, I kind of saw what it was all about. And I've actually seen a number of comments in our chat as well, basically say that what Game Pass has enabled is for people to try out games they would otherwise not have bothered with because they'd have to pay for them. And I've definitely been in that position as well. I'm a big Nintendo fan. I've said this many times, and I play on the Nintendo Switch a lot. And I often scroll through the shop on there, and I see, especially smaller indie titles, right, that are coming to the platform, and I think, that's really good. I might try that out. But then before I know it, I'm also seeing that, this game's also on Game Pass. And it's like, well, I'm not going to buy it there then. I'll just download it through this Game Pass package. And I know we've had a lot of talk here as well about people saying about Halo and how that's a big franchise for Microsoft and that is the system seller. But for me, that it's not a system seller for me. I mean, I enjoy Halo. I've been a big Halo fan for a long time, but I'm not enough of a fan that I have to buy an Xbox just because of Halo. I mean, if you are that type of person that wants it for that, then fair play. You're human. You're allowed to have that choice, right? But for me, it's the option to know that with something like Game Pass, I know there's a lot of chat still between, is the future going to be subscription based? Is it viable? Is it worth it? What are the pros and cons? I mean, those discussions can be had, but for the big part as of right now, but it's all speculation and theoretical, right? Nobody really knows what's going to happen over time. But as of right now, for me, I think it's fantastic. As someone who was on PlayStation, a lot of people saying that what's the point of Game Pass having old titles? And I think, I think it's fantastic, not only because they support backwards compatibility, because I'm really looking forward to having the Series X so I can actually jump into my library of 360 games that I have in my drawers behind me, because I know I've got some great content there and I just haven't had the time to jump back in. But if I know I've got my next gen box and I can enjoy those older titles, being up-resed and running 60 frames or whatever else, I think that's fantastic to know that I can re-experience old titles which are potentially long and forgotten about. But equally, from someone who did go to PlayStation and now wants to go back to Xbox, I just love knowing that I can go back and enjoy the Xbox titles which were only exclusive to Xbox, or even more recently, maybe being a bit multiplayer, but even the more recent titles. Because even though I'm on PC Game Pass, even though I use Game Pass for my PC at the moment, there are a lot of titles which are not on PC. And that's indie titles as well as big console titles. So I'm really looking forward to jumping back into that back catalogue as well as enjoying the new stuff that's coming along. So for me, it's that value.
Isn't that strange that obviously, we've just been talking about this generation and its lack of games, and myself included, a lot of us are excited for the Series X to be able to play some of the games from this generation. I think perhaps if there's a takeaway from this that, Microsoft haven't had the big hitters like Sony, but they've certainly had games. And like I say, I think Sea of Thieves is a good example, and Minecraft to a certain degree, in the fact that, they're popular in certain circles and they might not get in the 90s on Metacritic and stuff like that, but the people that do like them absolutely love and live for them.
This is what I find that interesting as well, though, because a lot of people have been saying, I've seen this a lot about how PlayStation has more exclusives coming at launch than Xbox, and technically yes, that is true, because you've got things, like Spider-Man is probably the biggest one, right? That's coming out immediately. But then the other side of the coin, there's a lot of people that I've, again, reading comments and seeing stuff online, there's loads of people that don't like the Spider-Man game. So for the large audience of people that love this game, there's another large audience behind that who say that, actually, I don't like Spider-Man and I don't want to play that game. So I'd argue that unless you are a big Spider-Man Marvel fan and want to jump in, I'd argue that people that do want to get the PlayStation are buying it equally because of what's coming in the future, rather than what is available today or in the next few weeks.
and that's obviously the same for the Microsoft as well. Like you said, they put a hell of a lot of money and effort into acquiring certain studios. So the promise or the potential is enormous for Microsoft. But like you say, we're still yet to see how that's going to pan out, I guess. Well, that's the first topic, believe it or not. We've got 3, and that was kind of the bad side of the generation, really, how Microsoft kind of launched the generation and kind of helped break the Xbox One to a certain degree. Lots of people, I mean, Mr. Tucci saying, the Xbox One's been his favorite generation. And I kind of get that. And that's down to the games. It's nothing to do with the box, is it? It's the games. And I guess, some of those will be first parties, but a lot of those will probably be multi-plats. And to be honest, lots of PlayStation guys will probably love this generation, not just for its exclusives, but obviously for the multi-plats as well. Well, let's move, if we can, onto the ugly side of this particular generation. And that's pretty much the console wars that's existed between the two. And I know they're nothing new, and obviously the 360 and PS3 days. It seems like this current generation, the console war kind of heated up to new kind of levels, and more ridiculous things were kind of getting thrown around and sort of bad-mouthing the other side. And that doesn't really seem to be abating at all during obviously this upcoming generation. And perhaps I'll go to you first, Steel Rain, if that's okay. But
okay.
Do you think the console war is a healthy tool for the platform holders to actually innovate and progress, or do you think it's actually quite destructive and harmful to the games industry?
Personally, I feel like me being newer to the what goes on Twitter, as far as like this the overall I guess our community and whatnot, the console wars tend to be more toxic than anything else. I mean, I'm all for good good conversation, good talk, solid solid means of communication, but when we start getting personal about certain things and starting to get real emotional about people that aren't even paying us, that aren't putting money in our pockets, that maybe people are getting some things for free just because they're supporting their favorite brand. I just feel like the overall console war tactics of it are extremely childish. But that's just me. I mean, there was a day where maybe I would be into all that, but at the end of the day, I like to play games, man. I mean, I don't have the Twitter thumbs to sit here and argue with people and say, oh, this box is better than this box and why this. No, I don't. Who cares? At the end of the day, you're spending your money where you need to spend your money at. You need to be wherever your friends are. I always tell people that what you need to, when they ask me, hey man, what console do you think I should get? I say, hey, do you have friends that play games? Yes, well, get the console that they're on, because that's the one that you're going to enjoy. If not, get an Xbox, or get a Switch, or what I'm saying. It's just there's so many different perspectives of it. And when we're sitting here constantly attacking one brand over another brand, what are we really benefiting from that? All is good in love and war, but at the end of the day, what are we really benefiting from it? Again, I'm all for healthy conversations. Like when we get in these chats and just start talking about these topics, we're really being, we're talking about it because we're passionate. We're talking about it because we have concerns. We're not trying to bash on, at least I can only speak for myself, but a lot of people that I follow, I feel like you guys are along that same strand. We try to keep it as honest and try to keep an open perspective overall, because we're gamers at the end of the day. If it's a game that we want to play, we'll get that console to play it. There's just so much variety and so many more options and opportunities that are opening up, and that's what's making it hard for people to accept what's happening. And that's okay. Again, it happened in 2013, 14. A lot of people didn't agree with everything going digital. Look where we're at right now, and it's only going to get deeper than that. The whole console war shenanigans. Hey man, if you're into it, if you like it, I love it. I'm not necessarily part of that. I like to play devil's advocate, so to speak. People, you can call that what you want, if what you'd like. But at the end of the day, man, it's always about having healthy conversation. Getting what makes Microsoft so great, especially versus Sony, is that they actually communicate with the community, and that's very important. Again, like I don't know if you guys were able to get a chance to see, but before we hopped on this podcast, the Iron Lords actually had Jason Ronald on, and he was going through it, and you could see not the excitement, the soul, like I always like to say, that he has put into this whole console design and the development of it, and how much he actually cares for what's going on. I mean, sure, we could say, oh, that's his job, he's supposed to be doing that, but I would like to say he came from a very honest perspective, and I mean, again, the man, I haven't caught the man in the lie yet. And there's doing a lot of great things that are happening. And I feel like that should be the focus. Continuously building these games, continuously making greater games, continuously putting people in a environment that is new, that is fresh, that will involve so many more players into the gaming community to just continue to grow us. Because again, I don't know if you guys remember, but I come from an age where gaming wasn't a cool thing to do. Now gaming's cool. And people would really wake up and the first thing they think about is arguing online. So it just kind of puts in a perspective of where we've come. Let's just try to be as healthy as you can with it. Be honest with each other, and it's just let's not attack each other's personal livelihoods, man.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I guess, to be honest, it was a little bit of a loaded question because it's one question with many answers, isn't it? Obviously, I guess my angle was how much do the platform holders listen to this stuff? And VJ, I'll come to you next if you don't mind. Where do Microsoft, do you think, get their steer from for their sort of strategy going forward? Is it purely sort of a financial one? Do they look at the numbers and see what the competition doing before they decide their strategy? Do you think they listen to the console wars and the negativity that's kind of thrown at them and decide to do something about that? Or are there other factors in play? Where do they get their strategies from, do you think?
I think what I've noticed today, it's funny that if you answer a question honestly in the modern world, you actually you can actually make a huge mistake, right, and get into a lot of trouble, especially with moral fanatics and religious people. Before anyone lynches me, the history of most of the wars and probably deaths and quarrels are over whose invisible friend is the most powerful. But anyway, consoles. I think it's just that Steel Rain pointed on a few things. I think the console war narrative is fought on a scale that is to a degree irrelevant to me and for platform holders and publishers, as long as they continue to profiteer from it, to be quite honest with you. I think most console wars are arguably fought in a micro, if not a narrow band of frequency where most people exist these days. But that you say that, but it's really only on Twitter. And I was thinking about this earlier, Flap. It's like, really, is like, what percentage of people that are on Twitter that argue about games and systems and pixels on screen? They remind me of stamp collectors, people watching and stuff like that, right? So it's the mass market, right? It's after the 20-30 million units. Who knows what that number is this time around, right? In terms of the hardcore that go and adopt a new system, and then it's all about the mass market. So platform holders and publishers push a global narrative and marketing campaign to provide a sense of reason and belonging, to focus the mind of people on their messaging. I think this is really key. And what's the messaging? Got good hardware, good games, and as Puxley said, value for money. PR and marketing know the mind, and they're paid a lot of money, and a lot of people don't realize how much money they get paid. And they understand the mind is the manifestation, right, of thought, perception, emotion, determination, memory, and imagination. I might have said that already, actually. Sorry. That all take place within the brain, other than when it comes to very subjective reviews. And I think this is the issue, Flap, and obvious bias via media outlets who do have a preference, if not an allegiance, to a company, and they try hard to hide it, but they can't. And we see it more and more prevalent because as gamers and as people that don't just take an interest in buying games and plugging them in and playing them, and then actually take an interest in the industry, want to talk about it. We want to talk about the difficult things, subjects that people don't, that may even be taboo, and we do touch on them on this podcast. And I'd also add that that review bombing, I think this year, from what I've been seeing, is the one thing that came to mind that's been very damaging. And I point to Days Gone, The Last of Us, and please chime in in terms of what Xbox games that have fallen foul of this as well, and even Nintendo maybe. I don't know.
Well, I would argue Rise, Son of Rome to a certain degree, perhaps not to that degree, but I think that fell foul of.
It's getting worse, and Xbox is, I mean, I don't want to talk about Sony because this is an Xbox podcast and we're talking about Xbox. So let's just focus on Xbox. Xbox's PR and marketing team is leveraging every single possible facet, is what I'm seeing this time. Whether it's true or not true, or slightly massaged, I couldn't tell you. I'm not a technical person and I really couldn't care less. But they're doing it to get a foothold in this upcoming generation of consoles. And the game industry in general, it's forecasted to be worth, what, 60 billion this year in the US alone? I don't know the global numbers. That's all Xbox care about and are focused on, which is selling hardware and building a subscription base. And I know I've touched on the media flap, and I think it's an important point. But to me, that what I've seen, and because I've been looking at more of it, because obviously I'm appearing on podcasts and I need to be able to give an opinion, is that most journalists, to me, are walking, talking algorithms, taking the official version of everything and communicating it to the public. And it just seems that you don't need to be intelligent anymore to be a journalist these days. As it's just incredible. It's like a biological AI with a couple of arms, with limbs, basically. And I think that how they are potentially aligned, manipulated, paid with marketing and advertising, and basically how is their slice of bread buttered, or how are they buttered up? I think is having an influence on the industry as a whole, and I think that has to stem from businesses. You just have to look at these companies rather than games companies providing you entertainment. Is a business that needs to do everything it possibly can to succeed, and I think we're seeing that more and more transparently. May not always want to admit it, but I think we do need to be observant about it. That's it.
Yeah, can I completely agree. Scott, has this generation been the worst for the console wars and some of the shenanigans that we've seen, on a little bit like VJ was saying with review bombing and stuff? Has it taken a slightly different path? And I'm guessing it's not, it's not going to potentially get any better in this new generation either. What sort of impact do you think the console wars have had on this generation?
Yeah, I think this is certainly the worst that I can recall. I'm thankfully I'm not that old to have been around for too many, but in my memory, it's certainly the worst. But I think part of that is probably sort of the rise and the prominence of social media over the past sort of decade. Towards, at least during the original Xbox launch, I don't recall Twitter being a thing back then. I was obviously a lot younger, so I'm not too familiar. But these days, it's so easy just to get an opinion, whether good, bad, or ugly, out there without any consequence. There are a whole load of keyboard warriors out there, and they've got a platform like Twitter, like YouTube comments, whatever, to spout whatever they want to spout about another plastic box, which is the strangest thing about all this. And just to touch on something VJ mentioned, is what everyone kind of needs to remember is, yes, we're all gamers. Yes, we love the games that we play and the platforms that we play them on, but we're just consumers at the end of the day. We're consumers to businesses, and they want our money, and that's what it comes down to. And arguing on
so do you think people that fight the console wars are trying to sort of fight on behalf of their particular team that they've chosen?
Yeah, it's no different to football arguments, in my opinion.
Exactly.
Flap, you've got a brand, a football team, whatever that's yours, that you affiliate with. And I'm a Sunderland fan for a couple of the northern members in chat there, and so I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of flack, particularly from our local rivals. But it's one of those things where you're affiliated with this team and you'll defend them with everything, kind of thing. And it's a little bit sad in some respects, because, like I say, at the end of the day, we are just consumers to these businesses. And I'm a big fan of Phil Spencer, and he does get a lot of praise, but I think people need to remember, at the end of the day, he's running a business that is trying to earn as much money for its investors or its shareholders as possible. And us arguing on Twitter over brands, over boxes, it's a little bit sad, and it's something it's been. In fact, I'll use an example today. So I've only been using this Twitter account for a very short period of time, if I'm being perfectly honest. I think it was just September that I started it, because I wanted to be a part of a more positive community, particularly around Xbox, which I thought was severely lacking at the time. But over the past sort of couple of weeks, I've noticed, there is such a a strong sort of fanboy centric part of Twitter on all sides. And even just today, there was a perfectly good conversation regarding ray tracing on Watch Dogs Legion, and all of a sudden I came in, it's like someone telling this PlayStation fan on Twitter to take an L because PlayStation's ray tracing wasn't as good, or something like that. And it was all a little bit sad because it was just like, this other person is just a PlayStation fan. He just plays his games there, just like we just play our games predominantly on Xbox or PC or Switch, wherever. And we're arguing over plastic boxes on the internet, and it is all a little bit sad. And I think, like I said, a large part of it is just down to the rise in things like social media and people being able to voice their opinions without consequence. And ultimately, it's not going to get any better. If anything, it's going to continue to get worse. So I think it's important that, in communities like the Green Pass gaming community, we've got a very good positive community, and we try to keep it like that and celebrate the strengths of PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, whoever, and not focus on the negatives too much. Obviously, you can constructively criticize where needed, and we've done that today. We've criticized Microsoft for their approach to first party and during the launch of the Xbox One, and how we're still waiting for them to fully address that.
Exactly.
But all we're doing there is we're because we're fans, we're I guess validly criticizing Microsoft for what they've done. We're not calling people out on Twitter saying you need to take the L, or
no, we're not making it personal,
ponies and things like that, which is all a little bit sad. But I'm afraid I think it's just going to get worse, which is really sad. And it's why I think communities like this one, the Green Pass gaming community, and a lot of other communities that I've been involved in over the past few weeks, are fantastic for the internet, because there's places where people can go and they can be positive without the worry of people being negative or throwing insults or anything like that at them.
It's funny you should say that, because obviously since I've set up the channel and the sort of the Twitter and stuff, you do get the odd comment that comes along, and they're a peculiar sort of left field comment, and they're normally people that aren't obviously subscribed or following the channel, and you sort of think, how have you found us? And they'll come out with this weird comment, and I get put into this very peculiar sort of position then, because I'm thinking, well, do I block this user and delete their tweet, or do I leave it up because I do believe in free speech and things like that. So I've kind of come up with the thing, whereas if they're stating their opinion and stuff, and even if it's diametrically opposed to my opinion, if they're not making it personal, then that's absolutely fine. I guess if someone was to get into a wrangle with them, on something I've tweeted and stuff, then I'll probably have to step in and time out both people, I guess, to a certain degree. But it's bizarre, isn't it, where you do get put in these strange situations, and it's like, do I leave that comment up? Do I delete it? I think I've left the majority of them up, to be honest, because like I say, if it was anything personal towards me, the channel, any of our panel, any of our followers and stuff, then they'd instantly get, banned and blocked.
The thing may be, Flat, and I'm glad you're getting used to using the block button. The thing is that what you're finding is that it's humanity's nature, right?
Yeah, I agree.
If they love something or are persuaded or have a persuasion, right? Everyone at the moment is trying to rationalize reasons for success right now. But you have to be right now, with the system not even launched, and you're going to have to right now for the next year and a half, and it's a very difficult thing, but you have to be an empiricist about this, right? You have to question, and you have to challenge, and you have to test. But people do not want to do that, and that is just not in the nature. They find it easier and more comfortable. We're tribal. They find it harder to be inside a group, part of the fellowship, have that friendship, and there really shouldn't be any questioning. And the world is moving towards that. You just see how politically correct. And if, as I said before, if you say something these days, you've got to be very, very careful. You can get into trouble for something which is quite genuinely. That's not what the implication was of what you were saying, and I think it's affecting everything. And we're in a microcosm. We're here discussing games. I mean, who really cares, right? Maybe the people in the chat and a few others, right? But on a global, when you look at it on a global scale, it's quite worrying.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And to be honest, you're right about getting, what you have to be careful what you say. And to be honest, we're always open that most of this is based, this is our opinions based on facts X, Y, and Z, and that's absolutely fine. And my facts are X, Y, and Z that my opinion is based on. You might have an opinion based on A, B, C, and that's absolutely fine. Different opinions, but based on certain reasons and stuff. But Pucks and I, we get called up because even when we do our midweek news update and stuff, sometimes we get some of the technical numbers and facts wrong because we kind of do it on the fly. And I had to sort of say one time, it's like, we're not full-time journalists. This isn't our full-time job. We do work as well. So we do our best to try and give as much accurate information as we can. But sometimes we're going to get it wrong, just like everyone does. Do you know what I mean? And people can be very unforgiving with that sort of thing sometimes, because I think they feel that there's one-upmanship to be had if someone, corrects you for something you've got wrong, even though you didn't get it wrong intentionally, or you're not trying to mislead someone. It's a genuine sort of mistake and stuff. But that's one of the things that you get for putting yourself on a platform like this and stuff. And like you say, you just got to filter out people like that. Puxley, the chat's been quite lively with this one. What experiences have you had with the console war in this generation, and how does it kind of reveal itself to you, do you think?
Well, in terms of like posting stuff, I personally never do post stuff because I've quite frankly just want to stay out of it, because I just know that as soon as I believe that I might be giving just a valid view or opinion, and not necessarily digging anyone in particular or whatever platform you're on, I just know that you're going to get, to be blunt again, get a shitstorm thrown my way just because of what I think. And I mean, just as a question that I saw in the chat, actually, that I'd just very quickly like to come to, actually, which for some stupid reason I can't find it now. I believe it was the seer who actually says, yes, just out of interest, what's people's opinions on the PS5? I mean, we are very much an Xbox channel. We like to celebrate Xbox and talk about it, the good and the bad. But to be perfectly honest with you, chat and the seer, like, I absolutely love the look of the PlayStation. I think what they're doing and the games that are coming to that platform are going to do the system justice. I think it's going to do very well. Equally, just as much as I believe what Xbox are doing and their strategy and what's coming to Xbox, I think it's also going to do very well. And what I find even more interesting as well is, and what I've realized from, again, similar to Scott, actually, I mean, I've had a Twitter account for a long time, but I've only ever had the account and it's never really been active or used. And it's only been active for me since we started this channel, trying to build the presence and all the rest of it. And, I've been scrolling through quite a lot and reading comments and quotes and all the rest of it, which goes out there. And I saw one in particular, which was, I've seen a lot of people who, a lot of people are intelligent. A lot of people are technically minded when it comes to computing and all this kind of stuff. And they know what they're talking about. But I've also come to realize that there are more people that don't have a clue what they're talking about, but really believe they do. And an example of this was, I saw some comments, which was someone complaining that the PlayStation, I can't remember if it was the Xbox or PlayStation, but someone was complaining that in Watch Dogs Legion, that the screen space occlusion wasn't as great or something else, and therefore that means that the system is garbage or whatever. And then what I found hilarious was the fact that one of the developers of the game, basically, he himself said, people don't know what they're talking about. It runs perfectly fine on both systems. Like, it's the same game. And there might be minor tweaks here and there based on platform specific settings or whatever, but ultimately people don't have a clue what they're on about. I mean, I've even seen comments from people that say, oh, aren't SSDs meant to make compression handling better? And it's just
Lord.
No, it's not. It's just a storage medium. Like,
exactly.
And for me, that's one of many examples of, I don't want to disrespect people's knowledge and all the rest of it. I mean, but there's a load of people that I've realized that don't know. They just don't understand that they don't know what they're talking about, which I think that's a big injustice when it comes to quote unquote console wars, because I think, a lot of the chat I've said, a lot of back and forth between people saying, console wars can be healthy until you get personal. The problem is people do take comments personally no matter what. So I don't think you can ever get out of it.
It's not
a bit of a tangent there, sorry, but yeah.
It's not about what you say. It's sometimes when you're speaking to people face to face, even in business meetings, you can understand what they're saying, but subtly you can understand the intent behind it, right? And that sometimes can be misread. And in terms of technical stuff, I will put my hand up, right? Because I'm totally inept in that field.
Yeah, but that's fine, Vijay. But there's two things around that. A, you always qualify that by saying technology, or the technical aspect isn't my bag, and that's absolutely fine. But B, if you absolutely did want to go and find that out, then you would go to the internet and find all of that stuff out.
No,
you wouldn't argue your point in ignorance, would you?
I really, really struggle with all the technical jargon.
That's absolutely fine. And like I say, you never come at these topics from the angle of knowing stuff technically. You like I say, you're very open and honest around that, and that's absolutely fine.
Michael at NXG.
No, exactly. There are people that do that, but to be honest, other aspects of the industry. But but like Pugsley was saying, there's plenty of people that kind of talk the talk, but don't quite know what's going on. They kind of throw some buzzwords in, not quite understand how it all works. But Pugsley, what's the chat doing?
You know what? It's been so back and forth. I've not actually been able to keep up, if I'm perfectly honest.
Yeah, we've had some real bouncing around today with the channel. I like it. It's been healthy debate backwards and forwards. I like it.
One particular comment I saw from Fugly actually, which made me laugh regarding console wars. But without console wars, where would the clickbait YouTubers be?
They would be actually making content and showing people what good games look like.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? That actually feeds into what I was just saying, isn't it? If they actually did their homework and took time to understand the technical capabilities and limitations of each machine, then actually you'd find that there isn't much to report. You couldn't really create clickbait after that, because the systems are so similar and stuff that you just have to. The reason these clickbaits videos and channels exist is because they have to make shit up to make it sound sensational, when actually it's quite a boring topic.
What's crazy, what's really crazy about it is people are really arguing just the difference in preference of what you like.
Well, we said it before, isn't it? My number's bigger than your number, so that means I'm better than you, kind of thing. And that works both ways. But
it's like arguing over opinions as well, isn't it? It's like your opinion, you're wrong, but no, that's my opinion. Your an opinion, obviously, unless you're just making stuff up, but your opinion's your opinion, your preference is your preference, and you should be allowed to have that opinion, that preference, without getting ridiculed or called out for it.
And I'm absolutely fine with that. And this is one of the qualities I look on having guests on this particular show, to be honest, is that their opinions are backed up by sort of, the facts that they feel at the time. And that's absolutely fine. I know that sounds strange, the facts that they feel, or how they feel about the facts. The fact is that their opinions aren't just, well, I love PlayStation, so that therefore everything Xbox is shit. It doesn't, exactly. But well, gentlemen, that's the second topic. Sorry, Pux, hang on a second. That's the ugly side of the generation. We'll come back to you quickly, Pux. But I just want to acknowledge the chat, guys. You've been absolutely fantastic. I also want to mention that if you haven't hit the like button, please do so. It really helps the channel. If you're new here, would really appreciate a sub to the channel if you want more of this. We've got a fantastic show lined up tomorrow. I'm so excited for tomorrow's show. We've got Wakanda Xbox News today on the show. I don't think he's done a podcast so far. I see him in every single chat. And he's finally agreed to come on. So that's absolutely fantastic. We've got Mr. Tushi coming on. We've got Fugly. We've got Fun Speculation. And I might see if I can get one or two others. It's not going to be the same sort of format as normal. We're just going to be talking about everything we're getting excited about. The games, the future for Xbox going forwards, bits and bobs like that. So really excited about that. So definitely tune in if you can tomorrow. It will be our last throw before the next day, and their new boxes turn up, hopefully on our doorsteps. But sorry, Puxley, I cut you off. Are we back to
No. No, it's fine. I was just going to make a small comment before we moved on about console wars. I was just going to make a small comment about people that often say, "Oh, would you like most, Xbox or PlayStation?" And I'm a lot of the time sitting there with my little Nintendo flag. I actually love the Switch. I'm a big fan of Mario and Zelda. So I'm in that corner.
Well, of course, I've said it a few times before, but obviously, there's that meme that Xbox fans hate Sony, Sony fans hate Xbox, and Nintendo fans hate Nintendo.
Yeah, that could be very true at times. Yeah,
which kind of makes sense when you think about it. So excellent. Well, let's move on to our third and final topic, and this is the good part of this generation. And there have been some fantastic games in this generation, and I've had a real blast this generation. And I actually came to this game late. This is Rise Son of Rome, obviously, and it's been mentioned quite a lot. I came to it late, and it absolutely blew me away. And unfortunately, I bought into the negative press around this game and kind of gave it a miss. So I picked it up, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, and thought, oh my god, this is a fantastic game. Yeah, it's 900p, but who cares? You can't really notice it much. It's a little bit linear. It's a little on the rails. It's not, open world or anything like that. But I had so much fun, and as the VJ's mentioned in the past, it's about this whole hobby of ours is just about having fun in games. And some people will like this game, others will hate it. And there was quite a few people in the chat saying, oh, I remember this game, it's fantastic. So, in general, I've had a fantastic generation, this generation. Am I sorry to see the back of it? Not massively, if I'm completely honest, only because the future's so bright. But talking about hardware, there were hardware limitations, particularly around the Jaguar CPUs and stuff. That really was not a backward step, but it wasn't a leap forwards like we're seeing in this generation. So we've obviously got very powerful CPUs, GPUs, and obviously this time we've also got the added benefit of faster storage, which we didn't have going from the 360 to the Xbox One. I think they were on both. I think we're on 56,000 RPM hard disk drives with relatively poor read and write speeds compared to what we're getting nowadays. So I'm doing all of that technical jargon. The platforms going forwards, there are many advantages, and I think we're finally starting to catch up with where PCs are, and the future is very bright for both consoles in terms of how games are going to look, how they're going to play, and some of the design changes on some of the design changes and game flow that we're going to see out of this generation. And I'll come to you first, Steel Rain, if you don't mind. Okay. What lessons do you think Microsoft and possibly Sony have learned this generation that they're going to take into the next one and hopefully not make the same mistakes again going forwards?
On the Xbox side, I feel like it's obvious. It's time to focus on games. Let's hone in on the games. Let's really focus on the customer service aspect of it. Continue to build your own service. If that is the aspect, if that's the route that we're going to take going into this generation, really beef it up. Make sure that you have that solid content there. And as far as Sony, I don't know if Sony's necessarily learned any lessons. Sony's going to continue to pump out content. They're going to continue to be consistent. I know that Sony knows that they can't play the money game with Microsoft at the end of the day. They do know that they could put out good content, and that's what it's about. Overall, the biggest things I feel like though is that Microsoft seems to be taking advantage of really focusing on the 60 frames per second side of things, and I feel like that's what's going to make the biggest difference. If we can continuously put out games that are 60 frames, at least have the option. I don't personally think it should be an option. I just think it should be default. But once we really start getting into that avenue of things, I think that's where you'll really see the differences. Again, I feel like Microsoft is going to show you what they are capable of through third party, and it sucks, but it is what it is. I feel like they will prove what they're doing, what the future goals might be. But other than that, man, I mean, I guess that would be pretty much it. I feel like both companies have a lot of competitiveness with each other, especially now. Xbox has stepped up their game, and not necessarily put Sony on the ropes, but made them pay attention a little more and say, hey, maybe we need to work on some things too. So there's definitely going to be, I would say definitely expect the next, this next gen for there to be a mid-gen refresh sooner than later. So.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. And to be honest, games, games, like I said before, this whole hobby is based around games, and like you say, games were lacking during this generation. So let's hope that Microsoft have learned the lessons from not investing in the right areas and perhaps planning better for the future. VJ, what do you think? Microsoft lessons have been learned, and we'll take them forward, and the same for PlayStation, actually.
I'll talk about Xbox because PlayStation, or we'll be here till midnight. I think that the power narrative is good, but again, what's the point of power when you don't know how to wield it, right? And that's still my.
It did make me wonder who the Xbox One X was for, to be honest. That's why I asked the question earlier, because, like you say, I think Microsoft had a bloodied nose after the PS4 launch against their Xbox One, and didn't like not having the power narrative, so they've won that back. But like you say, now what?
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
It was for Microsoft, truly. The One X was for Microsoft.
Yeah, exactly.
It was for them as much for the consumer. They wanted to have that power narrative back, which they had lost. And Phil Spencer's even spoken about it with the Series X and the Series S. They didn't want to come into this generation without being competitive on both fronts, and that's one of the reasons we've got two consoles. And they've, I guess, fulfilled that promise. They do have theoretically the most powerful console that's going to be available, but also the most affordable at the same time. And the One X, I truly believe, was they didn't really care too much about the sales of that console. That was so they had that, I guess, line that they could say when they're talking about games is plays best on Xbox because it played better on One X than it did on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 4 Pro. I think that's all it was.
So I think that, again, they need to be able to wield that power rather than just dust off old games and spruce them up a little bit. But I will admit, backwards compatibility flat is one of the things I've been looking at. It's a great piece of tech to have, right, or implementation to have, and preserves gaming history for purists and anyone who occasionally likes to flirt with nostalgia. But someone, I don't know if it was SX2 or someone else in the chat, asked, if this just papers over the cracks and the deeper issues, right, at Xbox. And I think that you have to know or understand the position, nature, and motivation from where Xbox is coming from. In a simplistic way, flat, what I see is that everything we've talked about from the beginning, the first very topic, like what went wrong, 2013, they are simply capitalizing on failure, which can be an incredibly potent and powerful place to come back from. Just look at Rocky 2. That was a joke. They were they were kind of lying in sort of self-imposed exile, dreaming up of what could be the future of Xbox if indeed they continue, with the division. I think that they've, as I said before, they've embodied and synergized flat what Microsoft is fundamentally good at: software and services for a fee, and harvesting a great deal of profit from that. Right, we can just see the numbers. Right, they're constantly reported from said business model, and simply applied it to the Xbox division. What we should perhaps be talking about is what has Xbox not learned, and that is launching a system again, just with the games, and that's all it is really, just and the content. It's really that simple. I don't see anything wrong with it, and I think the other thing that I've been alluding to is the ability again to be able to foster talent now and for the future. I understand games take time to make, and they can go horribly wrong, and they can be ill-conceived with the best intentions. We know this, but they need to also be able to show us that they can develop IP and harness creativity within the studios to produce groundbreaking, if not enjoyable content, right? And I think that's where we're heading. So that's the fundamental problem that I see. We've mentioned, is it 23 first-party studios?
Yeah.
There's no doubt Microsoft have the resources flat to purchase ZeniMax, but owning more IP and factories that produce, potentially more sausages, because we are all sitting here hoping that, hey, there's going to be some bangers, if I can call it that, right? It doesn't solve the innate and inbred DNA issues. It just papers over the issues at Xbox, which are highlighted in my sort of developer and development philosophy and ethos answer in the previous topics and in previous shows, in fact. So regarding Game Pass, you have to look past what's on offer today. Very few people want to do this, as the majority of us are more comfortable being part of, as I said, part of the tribe, and you want to feel the friendship and the fellowship of being connected. Why else am I buying an Xbox? The hardware is a means to an end. I'm buying it so that I can play with my friends and engage with indie games and other content that captures my imagination. That's it. There's no allegiance there, right? Because if next time around Nintendo comes out with a Switch Pro, we've been talking about in the chat, and with Zelda, I'll just switch to that because that's where I can engage with that product. So, and with that creator's ambition. So I've pointed out, I think maybe last week, flat, or the week before. Again, it's just a theorizing, right? It's just a theoretical, right? It's not my absolute opinion, but it's a theoretical dystopian gaming future if Microsoft and Xbox do eventually marginalize Sony and Nintendo via measures they've implemented and used in the past against different business sectors, against different types of competitors, to simply suck the life out of competitions, and with brute force, right? Xbox want the field to themselves, let alone the bat and ball. And let's not fool ourselves that Xbox or Microsoft, in fact, work in any other ways. You can just look at history, right, with the numerous companies that they've bought. So when subscriptions peak, how much revenue, again, will be set aside to cater for Xbox's divisional growth in terms of the studios, and how much will be earmarked for content creation, and what will the cash making software trends be at that time? I have no idea. Maybe it is free to play, maybe it is microtransaction type of product, and how will that affect what kind of content is created for the majority of the subscriber base? Go and spend time to investigate how Netflix and Amazon have evolved over the years, right? I find it harder and harder to justify sometimes why am I still subscribed to Netflix compared to when it first came out. We would be having a conversation in the future regarding our disappointment that Game Pass could have been so much better. And I think podcasts like this, I think the community has a responsibility to keep on top of Microsoft, that it doesn't go that way. If only, what I'm only concerned about with Game Pass, I want it to be true to itself in terms of everything that it provides all the gamers and keep us all included. I don't want to be sitting here discussing Microsoft's usual baffling product management decisions making. And we talked about this already, right? We've been pointing to the last 7 years based on the topics and the questions that you've raised, Flap. And I certainly hope not, because I am buying the system, and I'm very, very much looking forward to it. And of course, if we do see the arrival of such a fateful day, I hope I'm still a guest on the show.
Well, I'm sure you will. No, something major is going to have to happen for you not to be a guest on the show. I completely agree, and I think I don't think they will screw Game Pass up. I don't think they can, to be honest. I don't think they can afford to, because I think the strange thing is with Game Pass is if they screw that up, then they kind of screw up Xbox in general. Now, Xbox and Game Pass are going to become so synonymous that they will kind of become one and the same thing. So they can't really afford to screw it up.
Absolutely, Flap. And all I'm doing, Flap, it's not that's my, oh my God, that's going to, it's doomsday. But when you look at something, everything has so many facets to it. And we as humans, we sort of focus on the positives and the agreeables, but nobody wants to sort of, how can I put it, look at the dark side of the moon, so to speak. And that's where I come in. Just
exactly. Bit of light and shade. No, I completely agree. Puxley, do we have a winner?
Yes, we do. Would you like me to reveal it now?
Yeah, go on then. So
but yeah, just reiterate, because don't reveal the name yet, because I know this person came in a bit later into the show, so I don't know if they're aware that there is even a competition on. So would you mind just reiterating it before I reveal?
So we've got 3 months Game Pass Ultimate to give away tonight. I will DM you a code on Twitter. And we are doing the 563rd person in the chat. So whoever left the 563rd message is going to win the 3 months Game Pass Ultimate. 563s, because that's currently how many subs we have. Puxley.
Yes, well, they've literally just said, I wish I can win, lol, and lo and behold, you are the winner, Marion the Mad.
Oh, congratulations. That's pretty cool.
You were our 563rd comment in the chat, so congratulations to you, sir.
Fantastic. Well done, Marion the Mad. You are a regular on the show. I see you in the chat. Always on this show, and lots of other shows as well. So congratulations. Excellent. I hope you have lots of fun with that. That's pretty cool. It's a great prize to have. And thanks to Wakanda Xbox News today for giving us that code to give away. And we've got another one to give away tomorrow as well. So tune in for that. And we'll be giving another one away tomorrow. 3 month Game Pass Ultimate. Scott, just quickly come to you. Lessons learned by Xbox this generation and what they'll be taking into the next generation. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I can't really add an awful lot more than what VJ and Steele and anyone else has already commented. The main thing is games and content is key. Yep. I think that is the main takeaway that they've got.
How about PlayStation, just while we're here?
Oh, PlayStation is an interesting one, isn't it? Because is their lesson to keep doing what we're doing because it's working?
Possibly,
they've had so much success this generation. What are they on? Over 110 million consoles sold. They've obviously had a number of high quality titles that have come out. So are they now just thinking, look, we just need to carry on doing what we're doing? This is successful. This is what brings us results. And we need to focus on that. And I think that is why earlier in the year when they were talking about believing in generations and things like that, I think part of it was because they wanted to sort of just sell the PlayStation brand as being the place to play high quality content, because that's essentially what's worked for them this year. The interesting thing about this generation though is it's a little bit different going into it. If you think about the 360 and the PlayStation 3 and then the Xbox One and PlayStation 4, going into each of those generations, someone dropped the ball along the way, whether it be PlayStation with the pricing going into the PlayStation 3 era, or whether it be Microsoft and the ball that they dropped going to Xbox One. The thing I find fascinating this gen is no one's quite dropped the ball just yet that I can really recall. I mean, obviously neither of them are perfect by any means, but this does seem to be the most even going into a new generation that I can recall for some time. So it'll be interesting if doing the same is enough. But then again, people will probably say, look, Sony aren't resting on their laurels, because they're innovating with things like the DualSense pad, which seems to be getting a lot of hype from people who've been lucky enough to use it so far. So yeah, I think Microsoft, it is really just they need more content, and they've done a lot of work to address that. We're not quite there just yet, and yeah, Sony probably just thinking we need to continue doing what we've been doing, and we'll continue to be successful.
Yeah, no, completely agree. Puxley, to round this one off, lessons learned for Microsoft, and you're not allowed to say games or Game Pass. Anything else they've learned?
Listening to the community, I think, is probably an important one. Because I think I saw in the chat very early on when we were talking about the negative side of things, how a lot of the leadership seemed to be, and it's similar to what VJ was saying as well. It was kind of in this weird state of trying to sell services, but maybe at the time not doing it very well, or understanding what your main player base or your main consumer base, the players, what they want. And I think the way that, especially with Phil Spencer at the helm and what he's managed to do and achieve and move Xbox in the last few years, I think it has been listening to the players, listening to the feedback, and just acting on those. And I think that's put Xbox in a very good position to do very well going into the next gen.
Yeah, completely agree. And they've now got a public face, haven't they? We know Jason Ronald, we know Aaron Greenberg, we obviously know Phil Spencer, we know these people. It's not quite like that over in the Sony camp with Jim Ryan. So perhaps that's something they need to perhaps learn and capitalize on, and perhaps do slightly better. They obviously have had figureheads in the past, but it feels like they're lacking a little bit at the moment. And Sony, they can afford to perhaps be a little bit sort of stubborn and a little bit more bombastic than Microsoft. I think Microsoft. I think the launch of the Xbox One in 2013 humbled them slightly. I agree they're a business and that they're out to make money, but I also think that they do listen to their fan base, and they do understand that they can't just strong arm their way into doing whatever they want to, because they've seen the negative side of that. They've seen that actually, if you don't give the consumers what they want, they won't buy your product. And not only that, they can actually spin a lot of bad press to other parts of the community, which kind of brings us onto the console wars a little bit, and it has a knock-on effect. So I think Microsoft hopefully are over that sort of stubborn, do as we say kind of thing. They're not like Apple. They can't just dictate what everyone wants and people will lap it up. They're not in that situation, and they don't have the luxury to be able to sort of dominate people's wants and needs like that. So I think them listening to the public and giving us what we want to a certain degree, and things, that I don't think anyone saw Game Pass coming quite like it is now. So that was a nice surprise, and a bit like VJ was saying, perhaps it was an ultimate or a foregone conclusion that things were going to go that way, because obviously as a subscription service and stuff, it ticks lots of boxes. But well, that kind of wraps this up, to be honest, gentlemen. I've really enjoyed actually going back over the Xbox One. It's a generation that I've had a lot of love for, to be honest. I've had a lot of fun out of games. Just quickly, we'll quickly spin rounds in this generation. We'll go backwards. Steel Rain, what's been your favourite game of this generation? And it can be on any platform.
Oh man, Lord!
Pick one.
If I had to
pick your favourite child.
He's be my favorite child. Oh man, if I had to pick a game, man, I'm gonna have to say Gears 5. Simply because I'm a Gears fan. I've always been a Gears fan since the beginning, and I've fully supported that IP since release. I love what they did with the story. I've just grown so connected with the story, following it since the beginning. Going through the emotional roller coaster, and the coalition has been doing such a great job carrying on the mantle. Yes, they're not perfect, but they're doing a lot better than what 343 is doing, at least from the perspective of getting the mantle passed on. And I'm looking forward to what else Gears is going to bring with the new DLC that they bring out, or what they're going to do with Gears 6, especially for those who have played Gears, who saw how it ended when you had to make that choice. How that's going to end up playing out, and it's just been one of those series, man. I can always go back to, and I'll always enjoy it to this day. It's the most gorgeous game to me. And other than that, I think a close runner-up would probably have to be Forza Horizon 4.
Okay, no, that's fine. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic choice, to be honest. I absolutely love Gears 5. Pux and I played that through to the end with one other player, and the game just sort of stops, doesn't it? I think it took me by surprise how abrupt the ending is, but obviously at the time we were saying, oh, well, that's probably going to open up for some more single-player DLC, and hopefully this will be it. And for Forza Horizon 4, you know what? I was never a massive Horizon 2 fan. I never actually owned Forza Horizon 3, so 4 was my first foray into Forza Horizon properly, and my God, what a game! And it's getting the Series X patch as well. It's going to look phenomenal.
You're in for a treat.
Absolutely. So, Scott, pick your favorite child. What's been the game of the generation for you? Do you think? And again, obviously any platform.
Yeah. First of all, I'll just say I'm really, really glad that Steel went first because.
Sorry,
I
did throw this one on you guys. Yeah, this wasn't in the plan, was it?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So that's actually no, it is. We actually discussed it in the pre-show.
Go on.
I don't think I could pick either one of them. So if I could pick kind of like a franchise, it would be Ori. Ori the Blind Forest and Ori and the Will of the Wisps are two of my favorite games I've ever played, never mind just of this generation. They're both fantastic games. We were briefly discussing them, myself and Puck were chatting about it in the pre-show, and I think they are two of the best rated Xbox games this gen. I think they'll continue to be for years to come be considered sort of very high quality platformers. So
absolutely.
And then I'll probably give a little bit of a shout out to Apex Legends as well. I'm not too sure how many people would maybe bring that up, but that's probably my most played game, at least as of late.
Yes,
I play a lot of Apex Legends. I think that's a fantastic entry in the sort of battle royale genre. So I would definitely say those two. And then very quickly, I'd give a big shout out to Breath of the Wild on Nintendo Switch.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, no, that's cool. No, that's absolutely fine. Agree with those, to be honest. Although I've not really played Apex Legends much at all. I had a little bit of a dabble. Chat while we're here. What's been your game of the generation? Chat, you only had one each. So just let us know your game of the generation, any platform. VJ, anything that's sort of stood out to you this generation?
You know what, Flap? I was going to answer the question in terms of the game that I put in the most hours into, and that's got to be Breath of the Wild and Dragon Quest. Okay. But it's really, really difficult because I played those games and I love them, and closely behind that was Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's really difficult to choose a game, but I think that the game that kind of caught me off guard and I had a lot of fun with was probably Judgment, and I've mentioned it quite a few times on the PlayStation 4. I can't tell you why. It doesn't do anything particularly well, but it just captured me at a very specific time when I was
It's nice when games do that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just like the planets were aligned, and it just caught me at the moment when I would enjoy that particular game, and I had a lot of fun with it, and that's all it is. It was just pure dumb luck. You can call it whatever you want, but then I look at, as I said, games that I put in hundreds of hours, and it's like. But that's the ones that's sticking in my mind. So probably Judgment on the PlayStation.
I know exactly what you mean. Like you said, I've just 100%ed Supraland, a little indie game, and a bit like yourself, I just picked it up. It had a nice, bright, colourful splash page, and I thought, I'll give it a go. And it was kind of my thing. I quite like first-person puzzlers and bits and bobs. And it was, you don't have to use your brain an awful amount to get quite a lot out of the game. And then like a lot of these games do, particularly indie games, is that they have this hidden depth. So once you start playing it and you've kind of got the basics down, it's like, actually, there's loads of collectibles here, and they're in really weird and wonderful places and stuff. And you upgrade and stuff. And I had that with Supraland. Absolutely, I put so many hours into that. Absolutely loved it. And that's not my game of the generation, by the way, but it's just an example of being in the right place at the right time. And I was just in the the right mood. Puxley, what's your game of the generation while we're here?
Yeah, I do kind of had two which are tied at the first place. I think I might have to read them both out if you don't mind.
Go for it. Yes,
so
we haven't got a list like Indy was suggested.
Well, no, he says that because yesterday on Indy's show, he asked one of the topics for Indie Gamer when I was on his, I guess on his one, was to list 3 or 5 indie games that you loved of the generation. I came in with a list of 13.
Yeah, I heard.
So that was the joke there. But so like VJ and Scott, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild for me has been one of my favorite games over the last few years. And again, Indy will love me for this as well. But Hollow Knight is actually probably another one of my top games that I've played in recent years as well. I absolutely love this game. I've never really been into Metroidvania type games, but just the way it was done and the art style and the way the player controls, just everything about the game. And what I mean, maybe it's because I'm trying to be a dev myself, I guess. So maybe I get some inspiration from there. But knowing it was made by a small team of 3, and I put about 30 plus hours into this. You think, it's made by 3 people, it's probably a small game, but there is so much depth to it and so much DLC was being added that for me, it's one of those games when someone goes, "What's your favorite game of how many years ago?" Like that is always one of the ones that pops into my head. So I've got to say that now.
I can picture the splash page. To my shame, I've never downloaded it or play it. But on your recommendation, then I will. Yeah.
I don't know if it's your type of game though. That's the problem. But I definitely encourage you. It's on Game Pass actually, so I encourage you to give it a go. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've got no reason not to try it out. And like you say, a bit like VJ was saying, perhaps if I was in the right frame of mind, right time, right place, then it would actually strike a chord with me that I'll just get into it. Well, my game is Red Dead 3. It's quite obviously a quadruple. I suppose you could actually call it a quadruple A. I don't think that would be too far of a stretch to call it a quadruple A. It's just such a massive game and so detailed and so much love, time, and effort that must have gone into that. It's got a great story. I've not dabbled in the multiplayer, in all honesty, because it feels like it would have spoilt the single player aspect for me, because I love the story so much and I didn't want to be anyone else, to be honest. But that's the game of the generation for me. Before we close off, we've got a few other things. Obviously, the Medium's been delayed until January, which is a shame. What else have we got? The PlayStation and Xbox reviews. Obviously, the embargoes are lifted. All of those reviews in. Both are very positive. And I've got to be honest, seeing things like Astro's Playroom and Miles Morales has actually very much wet my whistle, or wet my appetite for PlayStation 5, if I'm honest. So I will possibly get one of those as soon as they're available, or as soon as I can afford it, probably more likely. Mass Effect Trilogy, Legendary Edition, that's obviously being remastered and coming out. That's pretty cool. Pucks, just quickly, what did you make of the Call of Duty Sony advantage that they've got with double XP and things like that?
I can understand people's frustrations with it, but ultimately, does it matter too much? I'm kind of a mixed mind about it, because there are, for those that are right into especially the competitive scene of Call of Duty. I mean, if you know that someone's got actual extras in the game which actually do improve your game, then I can understand the frustrations there. But for, I think, the large majority of players that maybe just do play casually, I don't see it as too much of an issue. But I suppose that's the kind of love-hate relationship with having a key platform, right? Seeing as COD, I don't say own the rights. Is it right for me to say own the rights to Call of Duty this gen? Is that the right wording?
Well, they've got the marketing rights, haven't they?
That's what I mean. Sorry, yeah. I mean, I suppose that's the advantages you get, but I guess I just hope that that's not used too much, because I think I've seen some comments recently online as well about, is it the Avengers game, about how the whole Spider-Man thing with that hasn't necessarily gone down too well, and I think maybe because
Ironically, the whole game hasn't gone down too well, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, whether that's because that's the reason, I don't know. I mean, I've not played the game, so I can't comment on it, but I just hope that it's not going to be a future trend, if I'm perfectly honest.
Well, it has been for quite a few of the last Call of Duties, unfortunately. But to be honest,
I meant for other games, though.
Oh, well, yeah, I think COD is the one that kind of pulls in that numbers. And in all fairness, Xbox had the marketing rights most of the way through the 360 era as well. So, in fact, all of the way through the 360 era, unless I'm much mistaken. Load times, Scott, did you see the load times on the Series X versus PS5? They seem to be a lot faster on a lot of games. So that surprised a lot of people.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's probably worth mentioning we are talking about backwards compatible games here, so it's PS4 and Xbox One games. I think it caught a lot of people by surprise because, obviously SSD speeds being one of Sony's big marketing points, but I don't think there's really too much to write home about. I think a lot of people made a big deal out of it, but ultimately, if you've seen the loading times on Spider-Man Miles Morales, you'll realize that console is bloody fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
But ultimately, both consoles are going to be running current gen games in the best possible state, and the load times on them are so vastly improved. It's going to be like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm looking forward to.
I can't wait to see it. So,
exactly.
But yeah, I think a lot of people made a big deal out of that, and I think kind of going back to one of the earlier topics, I think that was sort of one of the big topics over the weekend that I saw that was flaming the console wars, where people were using that to say, oh, Sony said this. What's up with the SSD? And it's like, well, look what they've done with Miles Morales, and you can see how fast that console is. Don't base it on some last gen games that aren't taking advantage of the hardware as your sort of basis. So, but it was interesting nonetheless to see that. I certainly wasn't expecting it when I saw it.
No, I don't think anyone was.
Yeah, it's still great just to see games load that quickly. I can't wait for Tuesday when I'm not having to wait when Lord and Sea of Thieves or Minecraft Dungeons or something. No, I'm not going to. My phone's not going to get any use, I don't think.
y'all in for a treat, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah. And one last one for you, Still Rain. Gears of War turned 14 yesterday.
Yes, it did, man. It's exciting. It's exciting and it's crazy, man. I mean, we're on the edge of greatness, man. There's a lot of great things happening.
Well, Gears is the reason I bought a 360, and I remember firing it up for the first time, and just the sort of the high definition fidelity of it just burnt itself into my eyes. I will never forget that moment. It's like, oh my god, this is fantastic, because obviously up until then I'd been used to sort of PS2 graphics, but. Yeah, 14. Wow.
Yeah, man. That Unreal Engine, man. I'm telling you. I don't know why Halo said no. We're gonna do our own thing.
Let's not get VJ started on that one. We will be here all night.
Oh yeah, I can get started on that too. Yeah, sucks, man.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, panel. Thank you very much, chat. It's been been emotional. And I've enjoyed tonight. It's good looking back and starting from the beginning and the good and the bad points and kind of where it leaves us all for the coming generation. Really excited for tomorrow's show. Like I say, it's slightly different. Lots of people from the community in there. Just some quick shout outs to Fugly, Indie Gamer, U-Ball, Wakanda, Wazza, 55, The Seer, Anthony All, who else have we got? Oh my goodness me, we've had Stubbs Gaming in here. Oh my goodness me, Fun Speculation. Scrolling back through all of the names. Thank you everyone for turning up. Like I say, please do hit that like, share, and subscribe if you can. Really enjoy doing these shows. It's always a pleasure. You guys are what makes the show. Thank you to the panel. Let's just do a very quick reverse order. Still Rain, where can we find you on the socials?
Hey man, again, I want to thank you guys for allowing me to be in the GPG Kingdom, man. Again, you guys can catch me on Twitter. Right now, we was doing a podcast with a homie of mine, but we kind of put stuff on the back burner. I got some other things in the works, just on a personal level. So I've kind of freed up that time. So I'm just trying to stay consistent in the community, man. Just trying to constantly put soul back into everything that we do, into this passion of ours, man. And just overall, just keep staying true to me and try to feed y'all that live, raw, and uncut those thoughts, man. Other than that, you can catch me on YouTube. I Still Rain. The T is a 7 in the steel. Other than that, man, that's pretty much it.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being here. You do bring an energy. The Americans do bring an energy to the show that we can't deny. This was always great to have on. Scott, thank you for being here. Like you say, I think this is your third time. Always a pleasure, my friend. You're very knowledgeable. Where can we find you?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I think it's interesting you mentioned that. I do think that when you get the Americans on the podcast, Flap, I do think they've got an energy that us British folk just simply don't have, don't they? So it's always great. It's always great to have that on them. But really
you know what? There's the people always talk about two things. They always talk about either the British accent or the American energy. It's really bizarre. Yeah, bizarre.
I've noticed.
Yeah, but no, really appreciate the opportunity to come back on. Yeah, it's a third time, so it's been a pleasure. Obviously, speaking with everyone. Obviously yourself, Puxley, VJ have been on every time I've been around, and obviously Steel Rain. It was great chatting with you today. So yeah, if you do want to follow me on Twitter, please do. You can find me at SX2 Gaming. And yeah, just to reiterate what you said there, Flap. Please like and subscribe to this channel, because I say it every single time. What you guys do is great, and I really want to see your channel grow. So yeah,
excellent. Thank you very much, and I appreciate that. VJ, you're a busy chappy. You're on Twitter. Where else can we see you? What's your next podcast that you're going to be on? Do you know?
Oh, no idea.
That's probably tomorrow.
It's been a really interesting chat today, and genuinely talking about today's topics and points of debates and probably prickly contention, if I can put it like that. But
yeah.
I've been sitting here wrestling with myself. Should I perhaps censor or edit what I may have to say? And however, I think I found it more than a moral duty to speak one's mind truthfully, other than when it's a pleasure to do so.
Exactly.
No, that's absolutely, because if you're doing that and people disagree, then that's fine. That's kind of that's healthy debate. I don't want an echo chamber. We've said that from the very beginning, and the concept of the show. It's not about having an echo chamber about everyone's just saying and agreeing the same things.
Yeah. So as they say, Flap, the truth is rarely pure and never simple.
Mm-hmm.
So it's and I make no apology about being passionate about this subject. I think it's really important. The games matter as they affect the hearts and souls, not just ours, but the creators themselves, right? That obviously sometimes get a brunt of it. So I'm just hammering these issues home because they matter, and I know I can be quite mercurial in terms of my views and how I express them. So I apologize for that if that's offended anyone.
But the trouble is, what I don't want is a copy and paste clone of me, Puxley. Do you know what I mean? That the show doesn't work at that point, because I might as well do it single-handed. Do you know what I mean? We need the light and shade to go with it.
Absolutely. And it was great to have Scott back on, and Steel Rain as well. It's just it just seemed like we've done this before, let's go. And I think it went really, really well today. And Puxley, as always, I know he's a little quieter, but I was actually quite shocked how outspoken he's been today. We should hear more of that, I'm afraid. So that can make that happen and enforce that somewhat.
Well, he's cut his podcasting teeth now. Like I say, it's his second one in 2 days.
I thought he'd just realised how hard it is to be a developer, and he should be more outspoken. For
sure.
Excellent, Puxley. Well, thank you for being here. Yeah, have you had a good show?
Yeah, no, I very much enjoyed it. I've liked all the engaging chat today. So it's been going so quickly. I've not been able to keep up with any key, because I usually do readouts during these shows, but I think this has been the first one. It's been moving so fast. I've not really been able to do that, but I'm just glad that everyone's hopefully enjoyed the show. And again, thank you to everyone, you guys in the panel, for coming on. Very much appreciate you coming here, as well as everyone in the chat as well. Thank you all very much for tuning in as always. I very much enjoyed it. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, me too. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Well done to Marion the Mad. It's always great when someone wins that, and they're very sort of grateful and welcoming to that, because, like I say, I appreciate lots of people probably already have Game Pass, but I can genuinely say that everyone that's won a code has been genuinely pleased to win it. So that's fantastic. And congratulations. So exactly. So excellent, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. Really excited for tomorrow's show. We would really appreciate it, guys. If you want to tune in tomorrow. Let's get some hype going. Today was about the Xbox One, but tomorrow is purely around the Series S and X, the bright future of Microsoft. You know, the games that they've got, you know, that they have so much potential. I don't think Microsoft have ever been in this sort of situation with this much potential, possibly ever, to be honest. This could be their strongest generation to date, and let's hope they maximize and capitalize on it. Let's find out and discuss it tomorrow. So thanks everyone for watching, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. Be there.